Yes, hi, hello. Welcome back to Gooncast. This is James, also known as Saber0307 on Twitch. And yeah, I'm once again joined by Kat and Lee. Hi, Kat and Lee.
What it is.
Hi, James. I'm Kat, aka the Attack Cat on Twitch. Dialogue designer by day, writer, horror enthusiast, gamer, I guess, by night.
And once again, it's your boy Lee Alder, the Valley Jester, horror and fantasy writer. And this is because of you people. You're to blame for this.
Yes.
This is true. Thanks to you
Yes.
guys voting on Twitter. We're here to discuss the Silent Hill circumcision theory
Mhm.
and, Walter
Buckle up.
Foreskin's Fortescue.
Oh my god.
We are extensive about this.
Yeah,
Yes.
we really wanted to do a deep dive on Walter's
Oh my
fascination
God.
with foreskin. And all the foreskin symbols in Silent Hill 4. No, we're here to talk about our
Good
top
Lord.
10, our personal top 10 favorite games of all time. And let me stress that this is our personal favorites. It's not a definitive, pretentious, oh, these are the best games ever. No, fuck
No.
all that shit. Fuck it.
No.
This
There's probably going to be a couple games on here that we're like, nobody should ever play this, but it's great.
Yeah, and there could be games on these lists where it's like, oh, it happens to coincide with a game that's considered a widely beloved classic, but in a lot of instances, there's personal reasons for liking a particular game and whatnot and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've
also-
got an honorable mention for an extreme piece of turbo jank. We'll get to it.
Yeah. Also, I would like to also note that for myself personally, and I believe probably a little bit for James as well, I have not included any games that I have personally worked on in this list.
Yep, same.
Purely because that kind of feels a little narcissistic to me, to be like, pat myself on the back that I made a game that's considered one of my personal favorites. I do like most of the games I've worked on. It's just that, and if I did not have that hang up, probably some of them would end up on my favorites list of all time. But because I'm kind of like, no, it feels gross to me. So if you have worked on games and consider them your favorite games of all time, like, awesome, cool, but that's not for me. So
Yeah, unlike Cat and James, 6 of my 10 spots are dominated by jank I made on RPG Maker 2003.
Yeah.
Surprise!
And the other 4 are hentai puzzle games. So
Oh my god.
That's funny.
Let's get down to it.
Because 6 of mine are jank you made in RPG Maker 2003.
Are they all Corpse Party?
we're being exposed.
They're all Corpse Party fan games that Lee made. Just involving Yuka peeing everywhere.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
the legacy of Yuka, Lolly of Time.
Oh my god. It's like a kendo mod, but it's just Yuka peeing everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the first-person shooter section.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're gonna structure this much like we structured our previous top 10 list for our top 10 things we experienced in 2021. So we're starting with honorable mentions, followed by our number 10, starting with Lee.
Okay,
Kick us
so
off.
yeah, I just want to get the honorable mentions out of the way. Putting this list together surprised me a lot because there's certain genres of game that I gravitate very strongly towards and that I feel like I tend to seek out and spend a lot of time with. And actually constructing the list, I didn't find a lot of those genres in the top 10. So it was really surprising. But I've always considered myself to be like a big FPS and fighting game guy. But then relegated to the honorable mention slots, I've got one of the most influential shooters of all time, Doom 2 Hell on Earth. Representing the fighting games, I got Soul Calibur 2, best in the franchise, and a piece of PS1 jank called Battle Arena Toshinden.
Fuck yeah.
If you like old fighting games, get in on that action. It controls like crap these days compared to what we're spoiled with now, but it's great character designs. One of the first instances of 3D fighting arena combat with weapons. And then shout out to a legend, because I spent way too much of my time playing it, Diablo 2.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah, so those are the honorable mentions.
Cool.
And then rolling into number 10.
Oh, before you continue, Lee, one thing
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, or two things actually. One, shout out to Caroline for looking over our lists.
Yes.
Yes.
To make
Yes.
sure
She's
that-
gonna be on the podcast soon. She's gonna be a guest goon
Yeah.
at some point. But yeah, for now she gave our lists the good old once over.
Yeah.
So
to-
thank
Hell
you,
yeah.
thank you, girl.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Caroline.
And then we decided to go by Screw Attack rules, which is basically one per franchise.
Yes.
Yes. Oh yes. Which. Yeah. Sorry.
It at least for me, I think it makes the list a little more interesting to make because like otherwise,
Yes.
it could be cluttered with, like
6 Metal Gear Solid games or something.
or like the entire Corpse Party franchise for Lee.
Get the fuck out of here.
Lee.
Get the fuck out of here.
Niku.
Yeah.
Niku.
Or with Cat, where it's just like number 1 through 10 is just Senran Kagura. Yeah, So it's like,
She's like, yep, you're right.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, I love them anime TV games. Yeah, so it's just we restricted it to the one per franchise, and it's personal favorites. Anyways,
Yes.
Lee, continue. I'm sorry for the
Hell yeah. So starting off with number 10, I tried to actually keep a semblance of order, like from 10 to 1, we're going, towards my favorites.
Yeah.
But, this murky, like 5 to 10 area is kind of tough to whittle down. But this one is firmly in a 10 spot because I recognize that a great deal of my infatuation could be recency bias. Number 10 is Elden Ring.
Oh,
I-
fucking nerd, hipster nerd.
I'm captivated by it.
Yeah.
There are, plenty of issues that I have with it that we talked about in the last episode of the podcast. And some of them are issues that I'm hoping will maybe get better with time, some patches, but some can't be fixed. Some are issues that are inherently instilled into the like core of the game, like the method of storytelling and things like that. But I love the great depth of lore that is integrated into the fabric of the series. George Martin has his hands all over it. And it's I've always had a soft spot for the Souls franchise, Bloodborne especially, but Elden Ring is one that you can just really jump into, adapt to its demanding play style, and not feel like you're climbing the impossible mountain like Dark Souls 2 could feel like. Elden Ring lets you feel like you can slide into the driver's seat, like you can, that you can overcome these challenges that the game is presenting you with only a few cases of like imbalanced bullshit. There's a few.
There's definitely a few.
Millennia.
There's a few, but like there's no bed of chaos in this game.
Yes. That is true. I will say nothing ever felt such bullshit as I've heard tell of in previous titles. So
Well, but yeah, bed of chaos, especially just to go off on its ass for a while. It's like, you need to bash it through its phases just like any other boss fight. But if you die like mid phase 2 or 3 on an attempt and then come back to it, it's still in that phase. So you start the boss fight at phase 3. And it's like, oh, this is dreadful.
but you have to like get through like all of its health still?
No, it's
gimmicky as hell.
It's a gimmick fight where basically it's like it's a stupid fucking tree. And there's
platform it kind of.
There's 2 orbs on either side of the tree, and you have to go to the orb and break the orb. And when you break an orb, all of a sudden, good chunk of the ground just disappears. It fucking collapses in on itself. So once you break both orbs, that opens up the center pathway to where you can kill the tree. Okay. And you then have to fucking platform to the fucking goddamn center platform. And all of its fucking attacks are like crazy laser shit and big sweeping tree branch attacks that easily knock you into fucking oblivion. Now, the plus side is like when you get to the center, there's virtually nothing that can kill you, and it dies very, very, very quickly. It's just everything getting to that center point is
just poor construction.
Fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
It's
okay. Well, at the very least, there's nothing like that. Yeah.
And Elden.
I do appreciate somebody including Elden Ring on this list because I was very torn, and when I get to the slot that it would have been in, I'll explain why. But yeah.
Yeah,
good on you.
yeah, there's just so much going on with it that I'm able to overlook my realistic gripes with the gameplay.
Mhm.
And part of it is that once you do dig through the mire of the quest lines, and now that I'm on a second playthrough, I know how to actually go through them without cutting them off prematurely.
Okay.
So I get to play them out entirely.
Yes.
And
yes.
the storytelling is fantastic. The plot is wonderful. There's so many characters that just jump out of the game and like reach that echelon of just like they'll be talked about for years. Ronnie the Witch, Blythe, so many fucking great characters. So yeah, it's got its kinks. We've got a whole episode on it you can listen to. But it's got to be in that 10 for right now just because of recency bias. But that's where it's going to stick right now. Elden Ring number 10.
Cool.
Neat.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'm next now.
Yeah.
All right. So let me start with my honorable mentions. Once again, yeah, I like in addition to what James said earlier about like we limited one per franchise. I also kind of tried to limit it to like one per like studio or creator sort of thing. Like, you know,
Okay.
I didn't want this whole list to be, you know, one person
Nothing but
represented or
you
whatever.
didn't want nothing
All
but
Yoko
David
Taro,
Cage
yeah.
games.
Yeah. Oh yes. David
Yeah.
Cage, clearly top
Yeah.
of my list.
Omicron number 1, Indigo Prophecy number 2.
Yeah. Exactly. But actually, very similarly to you, Lee. I very much like consider myself. I'm mostly a like mystery point and click like adventure game kind of person, and yeah, I actually had trouble kind of like populating the list with that because I feel like I play a lot of those games and I really like a lot of them, but I don't know if they crack top 10 for me. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot where I'm like, oh, that was a decent game, but it's not really a good game.
Right,
It's just
exactly.
a game I enjoyed but not loved. I mean, I meme on it constantly, but like Murdered Soul Suspect is a great example where like it's not even on my honorable mentions list, but it's like, oh, this is the style of game that I like. This is like the kind of thing where like if I see like ghost detective mystery like adventure game, I'm like, ooh, sold.
Yeah, it surprises you when you make this list because like I think I'm a big RPG guy and I don't have a single Final Fantasy on here.
Damn. Yeah, exactly. I was like I feel like I'm very like into horror too, and there's only one horror game on my list. But because of that, a lot of my honorable mentions
I
are
don't have
horror
any.
games. Yeah, right? I know.
Fake horror fan confirmed.
It was tough. Okay, but so my honorable mentions are I got to stick it with a lot of my co-op games. I really do like co-op games. A lot of them did not make top 10 though. Portal 2, Left 4 Dead 2, and Phasmophobia. Just phenomenal co-op experiences. I just like, Portal 2 was probably one of the first ones I got into doing like co-op with my friend. Left 4 Dead 2, I have countless hours. That was one of the ones that Will and I played together when we were long distance. When I was living in Baltimore, he was in LA. So we played countless hours of that with like, my sister and his roommate.
Here's the important question. Which character did you play?
I was usually Nick, I think.
Good taste.
Yeah.
Good taste.
Yeah. I was Nick and my sister was usually Ellis.
Yes,
There you go. That was our dynamic duo. And then Phasmo, obviously, like the three of us have gooned it up in Phasmo plenty. That we all have our likes and dislikes for that game, but I think it's mostly on the like side.
Absolutely.
And then the other two I have are two other horror games, Until Dawn and Resident Evil 7.
Until Dawn.
Yeah. You know what? Like I was not going to include anything from what are they? Supermassive?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't going to include anything from them because really like, I have a lot of problems with them. And Until Dawn is not by no means a perfect game. It's got a lot of issues. But I feel like it's such a great like couch like movie game experience because you can all sit there and like deliberate on, the decisions that you're making. Where you're like, "Oh my god, like who do we save? Like what do we do now?" kind of thing. And yeah, it was very fun to play with. Like I would actually show the game to, like, I had my sister play with me, I had Will play with me, I had a bunch of other friends play with me, and it was really fun to see like what they would decide to do. So yeah, that's why it makes the list. And it's just like, it's a fun game, right? Like it's a slasher movie basically that you're playing out, and you are the slasher essentially. It's a really fun concept, and I hope they go back to something like that. Like, I didn't like any of the Dark Pictures games.
Well, the Quarry
So really hoping.
looks to kind of be that way, and I hope the Quarry winds up being good.
Yes, that's my hope. And then RE7 was, my first Resident Evil game. It was the first game I played in VR, and it's fucking phenomenal in VR. And I really enjoyed it. It was I had a really good time with it, but didn't crack my top 10.
All right.
So let me kick it off with my number 10, and I'm going really old school for my first one. So I did like the opposite of Lee, where like instead of recency bias, I'm doing the like nostalgia bias first.
All right.
So back when I was a kid, I was really not allowed too many like video games. Like I had a friend who had a Sega Genesis that we would go over and play Sonic at her house, right? And that sort of, and like the Disney games and that sort of shit, right? But really, my parents were like, we have a PC, you can have games on the PC, but like no electronic device that's only for games, kind of thing. Well, I mean, other than like the handhelds, I think. But in the early 2000s, my sister and I managed to convince them to get us a GameCube for Christmas. We were like, we don't want anything for Christmas, like neither of us. One gift. We just want the GameCube. So they got us the GameCube. And one of the first games we got with the GameCube was Super Mario Sunshine. So that is my number 10, is Super Mario Sunshine.
Solid.
Yeah, solid.
Yeah, thank you. It's a so I have a very distinct like, one of the things I very much appreciate about games that allow me to just kind of like explore and roam around, and this is kind of, I guess, going back to Elden Ring a little bit, is I really like good world building. I really like good world feel, where it's just like you can just immerse yourself in this universe, and for, a couple of hours you're just completely transported into somewhere else, right? And Super Mario Sunshine was like the first game where I really like felt that, where I was just like, I mean, granted, I've always felt transported by the Myst games and stuff like that, but this was the one where I was like, I have full 3D control. It's this like really lovely little, like slice of paradise that you're exploring, and it's just so bright and like vibrant and cheerful. I actually have never beaten the game because at some point late in the game, the main island like floods. And basically, you can play in that flooded area for as long as you have your game turned on. And literally, it's just progressing to the next area that will trigger like the flood to go down. So my sister and I just played in the flooded waters for like hours and hours on end, to the point where we like left the console on overnight so we could come back and play more in this little like flooded area where you just could like zoom around with your little like jetpack, and like it was like, I was just like, this is so like, we kind of like, that's not the way the game wants you to play it. It's just like, that's supposed to be like a little minor thing before you go beat the big boss, but we were like, this is the jam, this is what I want to do. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and yeah, I think that game is really killer. I think there have been Mario games, beyond it that have been, better, that have improved on the formula, that have like given a lot more interesting stuff to do. Like, I mean, Odyssey and the Mario Galaxies are obviously very beloved, but Super Mario Sunshine just takes the cake for me. Just, again, 100% nostalgia glasses, but
hell yeah,
it's the greatest.
My entire list is nostalgia glasses, so.
Yeah, that's why this list is favorites, not best.
Yes, exactly.
We don't need to have a whole list of, and then in the number 3 slot is Breath of the Wild. Hey, that's my number 1. That's my number 2.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Just as an aside, I'm on team. I'm happy that people like Breath of the Wild, but it's not for me. It's better than Skyward
Yeah.
Sword, but I don't like Breath of the Wild all that much.
I like Breath of the Wild a lot, and once I get to that slot, I will explain my like decision-making process for a certain game that I picked over Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring.
Cool.
But yeah.
Okay. Oh, I think I know which one you've got. Okay, that'll be cool.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Jam?
All right, so before I get into my honorable mentions, the main thing that I kind of want to point out is outside of like my number 1 and maybe number 2, the entire like order of my list is just completely arbitrary, and like it changes based on my mood and what I've replayed recently and everything like that. So like it fluctuates. I'm sure if you were to ask me like a year from now, this list would be kind of different or whatever. But as for honorable mentions, Kingsfield, aka Kingsfield 2 in Japan.
Okay.
That game has really strong atmosphere. It has a shit ton of controller jank, but I like the setup of just like you wake up on a sort of cursed island with no means to get off outside of just dangerous exploration and stuff like that. And like, again, the atmosphere is fantastic. I think it's really just very engrossing little game. Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, the first entry in the Legacy of Kain franchise. Actually, that's my favorite entry in the franchise. Just Kain as a character is fantastic. The writing is top notch. The voice acting is top notch, and it's sort of this dark, mature, gothic horror 2D Zelda game. Next honorable mention is Super Mario World, which is the very first console game that I ever played when I was like 5 years old.
Yeah.
And my last honorable mention is Final Fantasy VIII, which is my favorite Final Fantasy game. Yes, I know it has a lot of problems. I don't fucking care. It's the game that got me to like JRPGs. And it was my first
other
Final Fantasy game.
Other Final Fantasies, with the exception of like one, don't have triple triad.
Yeah, triple triad is fucking fantastic. That carries it for me. If I were to say objectively what the best Final Fantasy game is, it's Tactics, but it's not my favorite. It's 8. As for my number 10, that would be Harvest Moon 64.
Okay.
It is my
I thought about putting like a Harvest Moon or an Animal Crossing on here. So I want to hear you. Why is it your top? Why is it your number 10?
I remember I read about it in a magazine, and I just remember the little like blurb on like the stupid like headline for it was "Grab your hoe and get busy." And I remember as a kid, I thought that was the funniest thing, and then I read about it and just, I don't know, for whatever reason, the idea of a farming game kind of clicked with me. I'd never played or heard of Harvest Moon before, and my mom, bless her, managed to get a copy off of the early internet, ordering it from Canada, because it was such a low print, so it was like very hard to fucking find. And I played the ever-loving shit out of that game, and I got completely engrossed. And I wound up with a really kind of subpar ending, and I immediately started a new file so I can get a better ending. Get a better farm evaluation. Karen is best girl. I will not fucking hear anything about it. Part of my reasoning for not playing a lot of the later Harvest Moon games is they don't have the cast from Harvest Moon 64, meaning there's no best girl Karen, meaning I'm not fucking playing this trash. Fuck that.
Meaning it's objectively a lesser experience.
Yeah, it's certainly janky and unpolished, especially compared to Back to Nature, which could almost be seen as like a PlayStation 1 remake of the N64 game. But just there's
a shadow of its former self.
Yeah, it's just there's a certain level of charm, and especially with the jank, like the fact that you can seduce Karen and get her into the status of wanting to marry you on like the first day you meet her, because there's a bug where you just keep showing her your dog in the bar like over and over again for about a half an hour, and she just
I showed you my dog, please respond.
Yeah, I think I told Kat that.
Please
it was
pet
like
my direwolf.
I think I told Kat that about that
Yes.
bug, and Kat was just like, "Is dog a euphemism for your dick?" And I was like, "No."
Yep.
No. Yeah, it's
Yep, absolutely.
it's
absolutely. I said that. I stand by that quote.
It's a super charming little experience, and just I kind of adore it, and It's the only
yeah.
Harvest Moon game that I've beaten numerous fucking times.
Nice. Very cool.
Hell yeah, good choice.
Yeah, definitely super approved. Lee, number 9.
Number 9. Okay. So this one is the furthest back in time my list goes, I think. I would have to double check that. Maybe not, but it's an older pick. Also kind of a nostalgia pick. And also just kind of it's one of those games that I feel like everybody played, and it has that special part in every nerd's chest. But I just went one little step differently. Because for all the people out there who really love their Pokemon Red and Blue, it's Pokemon Gold and Silver.
That is the objectively correct choice, Lee.
Yes, no, I love Gold and Silver, dude. Oh my god.
Because I mean, Gold and Silver has the entirety of the Kanto region in it, so yes, it's objectively
Yes.
it's objectively the correct choice.
Yes.
It's to me the perfect way to do a sequel. It expanded upon what worked. It introduced new Pokemon that, for the time were very inspired. We weren't quite at the phase of making the sentient ice cream Pokemon or the bag of garbage. And the people who want to counter and say, well, what about Muck? Fuck you. Muck was here first.
Yeah, Muck's OG.
Yeah, Muck owns the land that you bought your house on. Like, get the fuck out of here. It took the formula that worked and just improved upon it. Still young, plucky kid going off on an adventure. You got a rival. You got a crime syndicate. You got to stop. And then right when you think the game is done, boom, here's your campaign B. And not in that way of like, hey, you beat the shitty game with Sora. Now it's time to play it as Riku. No, take your team and go fight the next crew of badasses who are the ones you already know from back in the day, culminating in what I think is one of the best final boss battles of all video gaming history, Red at the top of Mount Silver.
Yeah, that fucking that was like, it's probably the most intimidating fight in Pokemon history.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh god, I have to fight me.
I will also say I think the second generation of starters is probably my favorite.
There's some strong Totodile's fucking strong.
Totodile's awesome. Cyndaquil, like, oh my god. Like I've never what Bayleaf is the other one, I think, right?
Chikorita.
Yes. Yeah. I've never played with that one, but like a really strong character design that becomes super cool by the end.
Meganium looks wonderful.
Yes. Bayleaf is the middle.
That's the middle one, yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think all of them have really strong designs. Well, like, I am definitely one of those people who does not approve of all of the starters from like Gen 4 on just become humanoid by their third evolution. Yeah. It doesn't do it for me. I really like the, suddenly I have a fucking dragon, by the end of my my shit, and like, just I had a giant crocodile and then a giant like fire armadillo, and I was just like, yes.
Yeah, yes. The newer designs occasionally like sometimes just nail it. Yes. Like, as classic as Eevee is and the classic Eeveelutions, Sylveon is my favorite, and that's Sylveon the newest one.
Perfect, yes.
As sacred as the first two, like the first two gens are of like, they're the core foundation. Like, a bunch of my favorites come from later generations. Dusk Noir, Salamence. Yeah. My favorite Pokemon of all time is Gardevoir, and that's not even because of like the creepy sex pervert thing. Like that was genuinely
not only because of the creepy sex pervert.
Well, no, it's like, once you become a nerd and you start like reading the Pokedex entries, and you're like, oh, this is the Pokemon that like if its trainer is threatened, it'll open a self-destructive black hole.
Yep.
That will suck in the opponent but kill the Gardevoir at the same time just to protect its trainer. I'm like, yo, that's real.
Loyal as fuck.
Shit. But then absolutely. Gold and Silver was the perfect sequel. It took what worked and made it even better. And I think that with all the installments that come out and the overexposure to the franchise, people kind of forget how good that early shit was. And you get people scratching the nostalgia of, man, remember Red and Blue? Nah, remember
Nah.
gold and silver.
Gold and silver.
That's
Yeah.
where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I fully agree with you there, Lee. Good pick.
Hell yeah.
All right. Now it's my turn. I don't think anyone here is going to agree with me on this, and that's fine, you know, like everyone's allowed their own opinions. And also I fully admit that this is 100% a me bias thing. I saw this game, I saw the advertisements for it, I saw, you know, the sort of like pitch of oh, here's this, you know, it's from this team who's done this other thing you loved, and also you get to fucking control the monsters against other people.
Honey
And I'm
Pop?
watching these videos, yeah, Honey Pop, you know, and I'm watching these videos of players playing as the monster that other players are hunting down, and I'm just like,
Oh.
holy fuck, like this is my fucking game. So Evolve is my
Yep.
number 9.
Okay.
I've
Yeah,
never played Evolve,
like,
so I can't disagree with you.
yeah, I mean, not a lot of people did. I was, you know, one of the like 400 concurrent users that we had like 6 months out of launch or whatever. I didn't pre-order the game because at that point I was no longer pre-ordering games. Thank you, Watch Dogs. But I did buy it like shortly after it came out. I convinced Will to buy it. That was another game we played long distance together. But after he had already gotten bored, gotten tired of the game, I kept going. It's like the first game I really played got extensively into multiplayer. I basically developed a little community of people on Steam that, like, many of whom I'm still friends with, a lot of whom switched over to Overwatch with me, you know, by the end of Evolve. And yeah, I even had like, I had a team. I had a little like semi-pro team of people. We were awful. We actually I found an old like post I made about Evolve on like Facebook or something like that, and I didn't remember this, but there were creatures in Evolve where the only thing they did was poop. They were these little like slug things that would walk around the world, and they would poop, and it was like a tiny little thing that the monster could eat. And it was basically just like if you couldn't kill something and you had absolutely no food and you just needed food desperately, you could eat this thing's poop. And we named ourselves after these poop monsters because we were like, we're really bad at the game. But like,
This is very tonally different from what I thought Evolve was.
yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's very much like my group really made it kind of like its own thing where we were just like, thank you, James.
Yeah, you're welcome.
He has changed my name in the Discord from Grief Clown to Grief Clown Poop Monster.
It's what I do.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, this game was just kind of like the first time I had a really, really solid multiplayer experience where the community itself kind of bolstered the game a lot. And yeah, when I would play solo, I would play Monster, and I will fully admit there was a lot of jank around Evolve. Asymmetrical multiplayer games are very hard to tune for. As we've no doubt seen with Resident Evil Resistance, it just kind of, and Dead by Daylight to a degree, it does eventually become a very unbalanced mess where you get people who, you know, the top tier people need their challenges, and then the devs kind of only cater to them, and then the rest of the community kind of dies out because it's just like, you know, when you kind of break Kraken to the point where they're just flying constantly and they never have to touch the ground and they can just spam lightning from everywhere. Eventually, in the lower tier gameplay, that's all you see. All you'll see is like low effort Krakens just like flying around and like spamming lightning, and you can't get them to land and you can't hit them, and it's just kind of like, okay, well,
wow, this is fun.
Yeah, exactly, and it just becomes really bad. But I was a Wraith main, so she's the invisibility stealth like assassin type monster.
Okay.
And I fucking adored playing as her, and specifically I played her kind of not necessarily anti to how you're supposed to play her, but if I got trapped, I would actively engage with the hunters. Like, I would fight them at level 1. Where, like, most people were, like, to the point where most people, like, I usually didn't win. I didn't win a lot. But at the end of fights, I would get, like, people thanking me. like, like the other team wouldn't like clown on me for being bad. They would be like, oh my god, thank you, that was like the most fun Wraith fight I've ever fucking had. And I'm like, yeah, no problem, like I'm glad I could like give you some entertainment sort of thing. Like
that sounds so much nicer than RE Resistance.
Yes, exactly.
No, I don't know about that. In RE Resistance, we had that one mastermind who just was a dancing zombie the entire time.
That's true.
That was really wholesome.
He was wonderful. Yes.
No,
that was very wholesome.
Like I don't want to hijack the story, but like I waited for so long to play Resistance, and then I finally got it. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna learn Mastermind. I'm gonna get this shit, and that's when I found out matchmaking isn't level adjusted.
Yeah,
and that's when I got 4 dudes who stunted on me so bad. I remember the last game I ever played before I uninstalled was I was playing as Birkin. I summoned William, and then 2 dudes with baseball bats beat the shit out of him while the other 2 stood nearby and danced.
Oh my god.
Nice.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I quit right after that. I uninstalled the game. I'm like, all right, we're done here.
I will say that like I wish Evolve had been more popular, but I do think that part of the good thing about it not being as popular was that the community kind of got very close knit. You didn't have people just coming in to be like, oh, I'm like MLG and I'm just gonna flex on everybody, and maybe that was true of the like, gold platinum tier people, but I was like hard stuck in silver, so I'm like, like I'm good here.
Well, from the way you're describing it, it sounds like Evolve was much more community based.
Yes.
Whereas games like Dead by Daylight are very just like one person out to be a cutthroat.
Yeah, yes. And that is
for their Twitch stream.
Yeah, and I mean part of that is because we had so few players that it was like, if you don't have monsters playing, you're not playing games. So it has to at least be somewhat fun for the monster players.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, in general, it was just it was a really fun like year of my life that I dedicated to Evolve, basically. And just for that alone, that it gave me so much entertainment. And I dropped off when it went free to play because they changed a lot of the meta. It became less about, because the other side of it was, I played Hunter a lot with my group, right? I was usually I played the like humans, the people actually going after the monster, and I played the Hunter class a lot. Specifically, I did a lot of Abe, who was basically Matt Mercer doing Cassidy before Cassidy was a thing.
Okay.
He was like a space cowboy. He was fantastic. And fucking Crow and Gobi, who was literally had a little alien hawk that you would send this hawk out to like track the monster.
Oh fuck yeah.
Oh, it was so cool. Yeah, I loved them. So I would do that and like sometimes the medic and stuff like that. But yeah, it was very much a very like hunt focused game where it was kind of slow at first while you're like tracking down the monster and trying to figure out where they are and really trying to like get in there quickly to like, get them down a little bit before they evolve. And they kind of changed it to be more action oriented when it went free to play, and it stopped being fun for me. But they did leave up some legacy servers for a while where you could play the old Evolve, fans basically like reverted their Evolves to the old school style, but there weren't enough people playing to get good games going, so just it all kind of faded out eventually, and then they stopped supporting it. It's no longer on Steam. It's kind of just like, man, I'm glad Turtle Rock is is kind of bouncing back. I think, Back 4 Blood was definitely a good effort. I miss that game. I wish it had done better so that they could push themselves more. Also shout out to Stephen Oakley, one of the best creature designers I've ever fucking seen. He's the guy who like designed most of the Evolve monsters.
I'll have to check out his work.
Yeah. He actually I met him because he worked on God of War. And I didn't even realize that I had been sitting next to him for like 6 months.
Nice.
The concept art pod was like right next to QA, and I was just like, oh my god, I love your work. And I just got to gush about how amazing Evolve was and how much I loved the monster designs. And
fuck yeah.
He's a super cool dude and also a fucking amazing artist. So yeah, check out his work. He's great.
It sounds like Evolve kind of scratches that nostalgic multiplayer itch of like, there's one I wanted to put on this list somewhere, but it's just like, I couldn't justifiably put it in there. But now that I'm getting like down that touchy-feely road of like, oh, the good old days, fucking, that's how I felt about Team Fortress 2.
Oh yeah.
Team Fortress 2 back in the day was just like the best.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think probably that's the slot Evolve fills for me 100%. It's that like nostalgia, like just hanging out with your bros kind of.
Yeah, one of my best friends from high school, Graham, he and I used to duos TF2, and it just creates those like endlessly great moments of like you're playing and it's wonderful. And then we got raided by this enemy team of 4 dudes who all played Spy, and they were Yoshi Red, Yoshi Blue, Yoshi Green, and Yoshi Yellow. And they had a function on their computer that let them play sound effects, like WAV files, that everyone in the game would be forced to hear.
Was it all Yoshi screams?
And every time they backstab somebody, they go meow, and do a Yoshi meow. And they massacred us. They were good.
Of course they were.
Yeah.
You don't get to beat Yoshi Blue through Red without.
It's not on
amazing.
It's not on my list, but if we're talking about nostalgic multiplayer shit, for me that would be Rainbow Six 1 for PC. I played the ever-loving hell out of that online.
Oh, good pick. I was about to say, don't say GoldenEye, you fucking bastard.
Fuck. I mean, GoldenEye was fun, but no, Rainbow Six Online.
I play Odd Job. Like,
no, fuck that. I played this one civilian who looked like Bruce Willis.
Oh, was I? Okay, I'll accept that. I was hoping you were going to say 006, but okay.
I mean, 006 was a good substitute, but no, Rainbow Six Online, OG Rainbow Six Online was a lot of fun.
That game was great.
It was. I really wish that we'd get another Rainbow Six game like the older Rainbow Six games, as opposed to this hero shit. And then now the fucking alien extraction, the fucking alien invasion shit. Get out of here. That's not Rainbow Six. Yeah.
All right. So James,
Yeah.
So I struggled really hard to determine which game from this particular franchise I was going to put here. And after a long period of thought, I finally settled on Drakengard.
Oh my god.
A game that will a game that will never be on anybody's fucking list, probably. My explanation
over
is
Automata.
Yeah.
Wow.
My explanation is jazz hands. There's something about just the insanity of it, just the dark fantasy setting, the super grim dark fantasy setting. The fact that you play as a super hateable sociopathic murderer as your protagonist, the fact that the entire supporting cast is filled with shitheads, and the only thing that makes you the good guys are the fact that the bad guys are fucking worshipping horrible eldritch abominations that will end the fucking universe. The batshit insane cacophony of noise OST. There's something zen-like about just the repetitive, endless slaughter and killing. It's basically a Muso game, with flight sections on your dragon and everything like that. But it's a very calming experience despite the insanity and the loud, obnoxious, chaotic soundtrack, and then the frustrating as hell ending E-boss. But yeah, it's Drakengard. I mean, I love Automata and I love Nier, but I played through the entirety of Drakengard, and then 6 months later I played through the entirety of Drakengard again, and now I've been playing Drakengard full playthrough about once a year, every year for the last couple years. It's not a good game. I will not say that it is a good game. Automata and Nier Replicant Remaster are objectively better games. 100%. And I will never tell anybody to play Drakengard. nobody should really play Drakengard.
Don't play Drakengard.
Don't play
everyone.
Drakengard unless you really are willing to just put up with a lot of jank and mediocrity in order to get to like a really intense and fucked up dark storyline. But something about it clicked with me. So
I'm really happy you picked that.
yeah, it's
same.
It was a tough call, but Keim's my boy, my fucking boy with the murder boner who just wants to murder everything. Like as Cal and I joke, Furie, Keim's sister, is in love with Keim, but Keim just loves murder too much. Keim's like, no incest. I gotta go murder people.
I love dragons and murder. And those things go together really well.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot that ending A kind of implies that he forms sort of a romantic relationship with this dragon.
Really?
Yeah, their bond kind
Fantastic.
of becomes sort of romantic. It's touching in a way, but yeah, it's
dragon murder over android booty. Okay.
I mean, listen. We stand android booty on this podcast, all right? But and I stand my bitch queen from Near Replicant, but Drakengard
and your gay skeleton son
is fantastic, and my gay skeleton son who eventually becomes a motorcycle, and my grumpy book dad. But yeah, it's Drakengard.
Hell yeah,
jazz
great
hands.
choice.
Excellent. And jazz hands. Oh my god, fantastic!
All right.
Yeah. Lee, number 8.
All right, here's the one entry on the list where I feel like it starts to creep into that territory of like, this one does probably pop up on a bunch of top 10 of all time lists on various bullshit sites. But I had a fucking blast playing it. I love the source material. And it did a lot of things for the time that I think refreshed the open world genre in a way that really needed it. And that's Wild Hunt. Tier 3.
Oh, very nice.
Right out the gate, I'll just get the gripe out of the way. This was before they really kind of like perfected the third-person multi-opponent combat system. Because the combat, it's better than 1 and 2, but it can be a little jank sometimes when you're getting into all the flashy sword dancing and stuff. But everything about, the choosing your direction narrative where your choices do actually kind of matter. Down to enemy variety, the story, rich open world. The kind of game that incentivizes you checking out every little nook and cranny of the map to seeing what they're hiding, filled with those little stories that are easy to miss if you don't run into that one little hut by the river. Lasting, enduring characters, from the source material that this game just did a great job of expanding upon and improving in some cases. Like Triss Marigold in the books is absolutely insufferable and is a rapist. And in the games, she's a much more sympathetic, likable character.
Nice.
But Yennefer is best girl. Yeah, Witcher 3, it gets a lot of praise from the big wigs and the big fandom sites, and like I said, the top 10 lists that saturate Kotaku and all this shit. But it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah, there's only one that I can say, because I feel like the gaming community has spoken enough about Witcher 3 that I don't need to say a whole lot beyond that.
Sure. Yeah, of course. But it's definitely one where like I've always wanted to check it out, and it's just kind of like the sheer size of it has always deterred me a little bit. Just because, there is a lot to uncover. It's a big open world, right?
Yes, it has a shorter playtime than Elden Ring.
Okay.
My
That's actually a point in its favor for me right now.
Yeah, my completion of Witcher 3 for the main story, there's 2 expansions, and the expansion stories are both excellent.
It's like Blood and Iron,
Blood and Wine, and Hearts of Stone.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Core Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, including like how I call it scraping the corners style of like, I want to really like work every little bit of the map.
Yeah, that's me.
That took me 90 hours.
Oh, Okay, that's not
which
That's not too bad.
is doable. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
And then once you get the expansions involved, I want to say the expansions will each add on 15 or 20.
Okay. Yeah.
Which,
Again, not too bad. That's
yeah, it's like especially after just coming off of Elden Ring,
Uh-huh.
Witcher 3 would kind of hit that nice point of like, it's tapering off of the long form storytelling a tad, but not leaving you wondering like, oh, why is this game ending so quickly? Like it's very satisfying.
Okay.
And
Cool.
it starts to explore one of the best characters of the franchise, Geralt's adopted daughter Ciri, who is just wonderful.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic game, fantastic story. Combat a little janky, but you get over it.
Okay.
Yeah, Witcher 3, number 8.
Nice.
GG.
Good call. All right. My number 8, to absolutely no one's surprise, I had to include an entry from one of my favorite game franchises of all times. It's a franchise I've been playing since I was in middle school. Or maybe not middle school, actually. Maybe a little bit afterwards. No, probably middle school. It's the Nancy Drew franchise.
Yes.
I am shocked. I am
know.
surprised.
I know.
I
right?
am surprised.
I know, absolutely. So this was kind of tricky for me because like I knew I wanted one of them to be on the list because they've impacted me so much in, just growing up and as a game developer, as just like, a person really who likes mysteries and adventure games. They're like the perfect fit for me. So I really struggled to like narrow it down because there are, I think, 35 entries in this franchise. And I've played every single one of them. And many of them, there's varying qualities throughout. There's some that are definitely like kind of like gap years where like they essentially they would have the team put out like 2 games essentially within like a 6-month window of one another. And it very much shows which one was the focused game and which one was the kind of like this is the one to tide everyone over till like the big game comes out. There are a couple that are much more like about like doing chores and like mini games than actually solving a mystery. But and I will say that like the franchise has gotten better and better as like as the entries progressed. It's definitely like visibly improved in many regards, to the point where like the last one that came out before they like changed hands is it just a really good game, like really solid in general. After that they switched to a different, I mean, Her Interactive was still publishing and I think the primary development team, but they had a couple other developers on the project for the next one, and it lost some stuff for me. That one sunk my opinion pretty low. But my number 8 is actually kind of another nostalgia pick for me. But it's The Curse of Blackmore Manor.
Okay.
And that is one of the ones that is more like horror themed. It's not a horror game by any means, but it's one of the ones that leans more into supernatural and horror, and it's basically that Nancy gets called to this estate in England, I think, where like one of her neighbor's daughters has like gone off and got married to this guy, and she suddenly stopped returning the family's calls, and essentially she thinks she's turned into a monster. She thinks she's like turned into a werewolf. And so you have to kind of like figure out what's really happening here. Is she actually a monster? Is she not? And you're basically stuck in this like creepy ass old castle with a bunch of like very spooky like suspects. And you're trying to figure out like who's behind everything. And it's got a really cool vibe to it. It's one of the ones that has like nightmare sections and like, it's very very female driven. Like a lot of the games are female driven just because it's Nancy Drew and they're specifically making these games because, to have a female protagonist in games. But this one is in particular because it touches on like witchcraft and sort of like, it's a very cool game. It's definitely like it's one of the ones that like always gets recommended to people as like if you want to try this game or try this franchise, this is like the best entry to go for. And so yeah, it's my favorite in that regard.
All right. Yeah, I was expecting one of them to make the list, and I'm pretty sure that's one I've watched you play some of.
I haven't played it on stream yet.
No? Okay, I'm thinking of a different one then.
It's one of the later. It's not super late. I think it's number let me see. It's entry number 11. So it's one of the ones when they like first started improving on the formula basically. So yeah, it's got good vibes. I will definitely play it at some point on the channel. It's just it's a matter of time.
All right, good pick.
Yeah,
Thank you.
My number 8 is Devil May Cry 3: Dante's Awakening.
Yeah, I figured one of those would be on here.
Yeah, it's. I prefer the combat in Devil May Cry 4 and 5, but I think gameplay structure wise and also even a narrative structure wise that Devil May Cry 3 is the best of the franchise. The game was sort of an apology for Devil May Cry 2. I'm not that's not even a joke,
well-deserved
really.
apology.
Devil May Cry 2's development was really kind of fucky, where Capcom kind of greenlit Devil May Cry 2 before Devil May Cry 1 even was like came out, and they gave it to another team. So like the team that did Devil May Cry 1 had no idea that Devil May Cry 2 was even a thing until it was midway through production, and they were kind of bummed that they didn't get to be involved. And the team it was given to was primarily composed of people from Capcom's arcade division, because arcades were kind of dying, so they were like pulling people from the arcade division and go like, hey, make home console games. And the development was such a mess that about 6 to 8 months or so before the game came out, they basically removed the game's director and gave it to Hideki Itsuno, who was also from the arcade division, and he kind of cobbled the game together the best he could. But Devil May Cry 2 is very much considered to be kind of like the black sheep of the franchise. But Itsuno felt so bad about the state of Devil May Cry 2 that he insisted he handle Devil May Cry 3 because he wanted to make it right. And he knocked it out of the fucking park with not only one of the best sequels of all time, but one of the best prequels of all time. Completely sort of like solidified how Virgil should be represented, because before Devil May Cry 3 all we had was Nello Angelo from Devil May Cry 1, and it's probably one of the best rivalries in video games. It has a simple story, but it is very, very, very well told. It's silly and bombastic, but it hits the right emotional beats, and the 3 boss fights with Virgil are sort of the perfect 3-act structure for a video game narrative, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's a complete blast.
Hell yeah. That's good. That's the one you play almost every year on your birthday, right?
No, that's Devil May Cry 5, because that came out on my birthday.
Oh, fuck. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Devil May Cry 5 came out on like right on my birthday, and that was that is basically why I started streaming.
Nice.
So
yeah, I thought 5 was going to be the one to make the list.
No,
yeah, so did I,
5 is really, 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 really fucking good, and from a gameplay perspective, I prefer it to 3, like in terms of like mechanics and whatnot. But from like an overall like narrative structure and just progression structure, I prefer 3 as a whole.
Damn.
Nice.
Okay.
Surprising, but I mean, I figured one of them would be on here. So yeah. Cool. Very nice. Number 7.
League of Legends. Put down your pitchforks, okay?
I'm leaving.
Put them down.
Oh my god.
I'm leaving.
Put them down.
No.
We need to have a conversation.
No.
Right.
I'm leaving.
Right. I'll lower the guns.
Okay. So yeah, 7 League of Legends. You have to remember that a lot of the bad reaction that name gets these days is because of a very toxic community.
Yes.
Which is why I stopped playing. I haven't played League consistently for years. But for those of you still holding torches out there, I started playing League in season 1. I played back in the day.
Yeah.
My brother and I were avid Dota players back when Dota was still a Warcraft 3 mod. And then when the developers branched off and created the Offspring games, Heroes of New Earth and League of Legends, League is the one that we hopped on to just because of, at the time, it was a very different art style and approach, and the cast of characters looked really cool. Twisted Faith, still one of my favorite character designs of all time. And so we got in super early, and I gotta say, if you weren't around for those early years, it was something special. And that's why it makes the list. It's remembering what used to be.
It's sort of like you were evolved, basically, at this point.
Yeah, I got to be there in the infancy of this game, and season 1 was, when it was hitting the pro scene, it was kind of what you expect from smaller, video game tournaments and stuff. So when news came out in season 2 that the finals were going to be held like right next to the Staples Center, it was like, wow, there hasn't been a game that's blown up like this in a while. And a good buddy of mine, Evan, had a contact with Riot Games and got us to the show and got us backstage hookups and shit.
Hell yeah!
And got to meet some of the developers and some of the pro players, and to be along for the ride and to see it grow and take over stadiums. And now it's kind of reached for us the level that like a lot of like StarCraft was in South Korea, of like this absolute spectacle. And yeah, it's unfortunate that these days it's become, to me, nigh unplayable. I in my older, more crotchety years, I don't enjoy playing games that have that toxic cutthroat multiplayer. I don't have an interest in it. That all can shove off. But what's coming from the game these days is better than the game itself. Like for those of you out there who listen to our top 10 of 2021, I absolutely love Arcane. Arcane is almost better than the fucking game it was based off of. So yeah, me having League on that list it's remembering what used to be. It's linked to so many of those memories of me and the boys getting our computers together and taking them to our buddy Dak's house and crowding them all into his pool room and just crushing ranked games all weekend, living off of whatever shit we could buy from the 7-Eleven 2 blocks away. There's a lot of good memories wrapped up in it.
Hell yeah.
And I'm happy where I am now with the game as an outsider. I'll still tune in to watch the World Finals every year. I've still got a couple good friends who are big into watching the pro events, so we'll watch that together. But as a player, I'm pretty hands off these days, but I shed a single tear for the beautiful years that used to be. So League of Legends, number 7.
Nice. Very good. I appreciate your reasoning there. And I know people who still play League and they're not toxic assholes about it. It's just like, there's definitely still fun to be had, but yeah, I do think that you probably had something very special back then, and it's definitely not that now.
Yeah, because back in the day, you still kind of had you had multiple games from similar developers who were like trying to fight it out for that top spot. Dota was still trying to be its thing. Dota 2 hadn't even come out yet. Heroes of New Earth was trying to do its thing. League was doing its thing. So it was like you picked your team and you rolled with it. So as long as you were playing the same game, you were on the same team.
Yeah, but yeah, now it's...
And then the vicious bullshit started.
Yeah, exactly. When you're like on top and nobody else can touch you, then the infighting starts.
Yeah.
All right. So 7 and 6 for me are kind of the two slots that sort of occupied where I thought maybe Elden Ring was going to sit.
Okay.
7 in particular. 7 surprisingly, I've found that a lot of the games I tend to gravitate to are like open world style games. And it's really kind of a like, I like to play a big sprawling story with a lot of player agency, and that gives me like, a lot of free time basically to just kind of like zone out and chill in the world that you've built, right? I think Elden Ring definitely scratched that itch. Breath of the Wild, Death Stranding, all of those kind of like had elements of that for me that I really appreciated. The one I ended up picking for number 7 was one that like basically started my love of this genre, and I have a lot of reasons for putting it on this list, but I'm gonna narrow it down to 3. My number 7 is Skyrim.
Ooh.
Yeah. Part of it is I am a basic bitch, and it's a very basic bitch game. No, it's it's a classic.
There's somebody out there scowling, going, "Ugh, fuck! She should have picked Daggerfall."
Yeah, it's like, I understand Skyrim is like the one that's like the most popular, so it's very much like, yeah, of course it's gonna end up on like top 10 lists and stuff like that. But like, genuinely, I really do like this game, and for me, it's 3 reasons. The first is that it was one of the it was a big, I didn't game that much before like the PS3, basically. Like that was kind of the first big console I had. And then Skyrim kind of like it does this thing to open worlds, which like it's not a perfect open world by any means. But the way the narrative unfolds, not only is it all like interconnected like Elden Ring, but you actively feel like you are a part of it, where the things that you do affect storylines, and not just in a way of like, oh, you kill a guy and that guy's dead now, in like ways where like you make a decision who to support, and then that, that group fundamentally alters the world around you, where you're hearing things about like, how these people are doing. It's changing other quest lines that you didn't even think they were related to. It's like altering all of this stuff. So I think it does it in a very, very interesting way that a lot of other games don't.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 for me was basically simply because like I actually felt like I was playing a character in this world. We've talked a lot about like Breath of the Wild is great, right? But you're Link, right? You're not you, Link. You're not a character you're building, Link. You're Link. He's basically just like the hero out of time, and he's trying to save the world. I think they did a phenomenal job in that game with the other characters, with the other heroes, characterizing them, and also like Zelda's journey is the best I've ever seen out of a Zelda game.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, like your character doesn't really have much like affecting the world. But like with Skyrim, it's like I could be fucking anybody, right? Granted, we all always default to stealth archer, but but as a character, like as you're interacting, yeah, exactly. You gotta. As a character, as you're interacting with the world, like for example, one of my first characters that I played was he was a dark elf. Specifically, I picked him because I really liked the fire resistance, right? I'm like, that's really great for early game dragon fights, so I wanna roll with that. He's a dark elf, and he ended up siding with the Stormcloaks, who are like notoriously racist, and specifically their like capital city is gentrified, where the dark elves are like oppressed. And the whole reason that I picked him and I made him side with the Stormcloak is because I was like, well, my character here is kind of a dick. Like, he's like a traitor to everybody. He's basically just out for himself, and like whatever he can do to get ahead, whether he has to like step on his own people to do that, like he's gonna fucking do it, right? And like the fact that the game like supported that decision, and that like it kind of like built off of that, and like made the narrative like yeah, you're being an asshole, like not in like a very like binary moral choice kind of way, but just in a like I was able to make these decisions despite the fact that like kind of anti who this like like what a good character would do, or what a like you're not pigeonholed into being the hero, you're not the chosen one, you are because you're the Dragonborn, but that doesn't mean you can't be an asshole or you can't be like, you know, the head of the Assassin's Guild or like a thief or like, you know, all this other stuff. It's just like so many options.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and then the last reason is probably the reason a lot of people don't like the game. It was the bugs. Like, I know it's very weird to say, and I've hit my share of like truly game-breaking, frustrating, annoying bugs. Not to the level that I know James has mentioned before, where like it just like totally like bricks your game and stuff like that. But
Well,
you
I
know,
haven't
I
run
hit
into
somewhere.
those on Skyrim, but that
Well,
was like
yeah,
Fallout New Vegas.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but like, you know, I know there are those where it's just like you just hit a bug and it just like breaks a quest entirely, right? But I will say there's so many just like it's such a big game and it's clearly not made with like that much attention to polish. But because of that, it just makes it so it was the first game that showed me how entertaining bugs could be. And it's kind of what started me on the path to like being QA and like actually being engaged with that sort of like work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like, yeah, to you know, like I really like the detective work part of the job. But on top of that, there's also a level of entertainment where like when you see a character just like, you know, suddenly just start like their limbs elongating for no reason as the ragdoll physics go insane, and you just can't help but fucking start laughing. Because it's just like this is so goofy and so funny, and it just like doesn't feel like it's taking itself too seriously in these moments. And it's peak entertainment. So yeah, that's why Skyrim is my number 7, is because even though I think there are open worlds that have done it better, I think certainly Elden Ring is an improvement. I'm gonna give it to the classic that like I can keep coming back to that. I could drop a new character today and have a completely different gameplay experience than I did with my other like 5 characters. So Skyrim.
Fuck yeah.
But which version?
Oh.
I mean, I played on PS3 and PS4. So
You
The
need to
one that
own
you
all
can
of
play
them.
on the touchpad of a refrigerator.
The one you can play on your
Yeah.
dad's Etch-a-Sketch.
Yeah, you know. No, I will not suffer the constant remakes, but you know, I mean, I get why, because I guess it prints money, so
Yeah.
Someone got doomed to run on a pregnancy test.
Yeah, I
oh
saw
my
that.
god.
Yeah, that was
Fucking
beautiful.
great.
I love those mad lads.
I love the there was a meme about like you know, the oldest computer they found. It was like Bronze Age or something like that, like dated back to wherever, and they're like, it's kept under lock and key in this museum because 1, we don't know what the elements will do to it, and 2, we don't want one of you fuckers trying to run Doom on this thing.
Yeah,
Because they will.
they will.
Because they fucking will.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yep.
So my number 7 is a much beloved classic, and it's on somebody else's list. So Lee, go ahead.
Oh my god.
Ooh.
You monster.
All
I think I know what
right.
it is actually, but we'll see.
You don't know a fucking thing.
I have a guess.
All right. So number 6. This was one of those instances of needing to duke it out between which one was going to take the seat. Because I imagined there was going to be so much more fighting game representation on my list. Because it's a genre that I'm really, really super into. But Soul Calibur didn't make it on there. None of the Mortal Kombats really did it for me. As much as Cammy's my girl, Street Fighter's not on there. But Tekken Tag Tournament is going to take that spot.
Nice.
Wow. Okay.
So Tekken's been my jam for a long time. Tekken's kind of that thing, like it's that game that you keep in your back pocket about like when someone starts talking some shit at a party when the console's out. And it's like, oh man, I'll take you. I'm like, okay, you got Tekken? Load up that Tekken, baby. And Tag Tournament was just that one that hit it for me the best. Like, is it objectively the best in the series? Not by a long shot. Tekken 3 is unstoppable in that regard. Tekken 3 is just probably one of the best fighting games ever made. Tekken 7 has been fantastic lately. And then like my old school nostalgia pick with my brother is Tekken 2. But Tag Tournament the very first one, the second's good, but the first one, it was that nice expansion of the roster before a lot of other games started doing it. Like Smash bringing back old rosters, kind of getting the gangs all here sort of attitude. Tag Tournament was one of the first ones I remember of taking all the characters from previous games and smashing them all together into one and going, all right, get in there, have fun.
Yeah, I think fighting game wise, outside of just the very rare instances that Mortal Kombat does that, the only games that I can think of are like King of Fighters with their dream match entries. I think.
Yeah. MK is a good example because they did a trilogy back in the day where they put like 70 fucking people into one game on PlayStation 1.
And Armageddon.
Oh God, Armageddon. There you go. Oh, that's some good old jank right there. But Tag Tournament did it all with style and flourish, and it was before there was that phase of like every game in a franchise needs to have a new feature, a new thing, which like Soul Calibur started doing. Every fucking Soul Calibur needed to have some new feature. King of Fighters is notorious for that. Street Fighter always does that. Like, we got to have the new type of super guard break or the new EX whatever move. Tekken just went, here's your dudes, and you get 2 of them, and you tag them in and out like Marvel versus Capcom. Fucking go. And it did it for me. It's got a lot of good memories. Endless matches between my brother and I. My buddy Johnny, we'd basically just go to people's parties because we knew they played Tekken, and we would just like show up, smoke all their weed, and beat all their asses at Tekken. It was great. No one can beat my king. My king is untouchable. But yeah, just it's the best in the franchise to me. And just has a lot of good memories attached to it. So Tekken Tag Tournament.
Nice.
Will is pretty big in fighting on fighting games. I don't know if he's played Tekken yet, or if he's played Tekken. If he has, though, I wanna get you guys together to duke it out. That's what I want. He would adore it. Like he would absolutely. He hasn't. I don't think he's done. Because he used to do like Smash tournaments and like a bunch of other like Guilty Gear stuff like that, like with people. But he hasn't done it in a really long time, so I think he'd get a real kick out of it.
Hell yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
All right, what you got?
It's my turn. All right. Number 6 for me. Again, this is sort of a like pseudo Elden Ring replacement. But it's Journey.
Ooh.
Journey's my number 6. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Don't stop believing, Kat.
Yes, that Journey. So, very specifically, I picked up this game pretty much when it came out on PS3. I wasn't, I really didn't know what to expect. I just heard it was like a fun little game, and you just, it's like a little platformer, and you just kind of, it's like it's got some co-op, but you don't know who you're playing with, and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And I played through it, and first of all, it's beautiful. The atmosphere of this game is fantastic. It's so simple and elegant, and it just fucking works. Like you just like that combined with the music, it's like the perfect, like just like relaxing experience. But the game itself has its challenges. And I remember, specifically, like I was going through, I was my little red cape dude. This is my first playthrough through it, and I was just kind of like running through, collecting stuff, trying to figure stuff out. And the way the game is structured is you can play it offline, but if you play it online, you can have random people join your game. And they can join in, they can help you through some stuff, and then they can move on. If you're too far behind or whatever, or they'll just keep going. And it's kind of just like various people sort of like coming to you in your journey to try to like help you out. And then at one point in my playthrough, the random person who joined me was this white robe dude. And I was like, oh, like you have a white robe. What does that mean? And I was just like, I just ran around. I was like dancing around him, and I was like so excited to see him. And I was just like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're doing. And he did a little dance for me too. And then he proceeded to just like take my hand and like guide me through the entire game. Like he was just like helping me. He was showing me like where the secrets were. He was helping me on like the harder jumps. Like if I fell, he didn't just go ahead. He jumped down with me so we could do it again. Like we could figure out the platform again together. And yeah, he led me through like we were at like the tail end of the game. So he led me through like the whole second like last like I don't know, like hour or so. It's a very short game too, by the way. But he led me through that last section, and we got to the top of the mountain, and he drew me a little heart in the snow, and that's supposed to be like the, like the big thank you everybody does. I have no idea who this person is. I will never know who this person was, but like for that hour, they were like my best friend in the world. And I know James has talked about that was a big part of like Miyazaki's design philosophy for the like Dark Souls co-op and the Elden Ring co-op. And I think Journey is just like the perfect encapsulation of that design philosophy of just like having random strangers just like help you through your journey. Like, and it's so good. Like I have to give them props for just like distilling this into this like perfect little experience. And I've had plenty of people like say like Journey didn't click for them. Journey like, like they played a little bit, they just didn't get it. And I'm just kind of like, I feel like I just had the perfect experience with it where, and I learned later that the white robe dudes are the ones who have like 100% of the game. Like they've gotten all the secrets, and basically that's how you unlock the white robe. So he was this guy who was just like playing through the game and just coming in and just helping random people. And I'm like,
that's sweet.
I have no idea who you are, but you are like one of the good ones, like
you're real OG.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think it's, yeah, it really just like, it elevated co-op with strangers to a degree that I never thought, could be possible. So that's why Journey is my number 6.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Right
Great
on.
choice.
Thank you.
My number 6 is Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. It was kind of a toss-up between Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Solid 1. I think I prefer the overall villains in Metal Gear Solid 1 more, and the plot is more grounded in Metal Gear Solid 1. 3 is much more camp, since it's kind of aiming to emulate a lot of 60s James Bond spy trope type shit. And with mix of some like 60s era science fiction and whatnot. But it was fantastic from a gameplay perspective, like a great evolution of the core gameplay loop of stealth, espionage, action, and whatnot, and the boss fights were impeccably designed. But more importantly, the narrative hits you on an emotional level towards the end. You're kind of going through it, and it's this campy, silly spy thing, set in the Cold War and whatnot. And, it's ridiculous and over the top. I mean, one of the fucking characters is the fucking Pain, and he fucking controls bees, and he makes a Tommy gun out of bees, and he fires fucking bees at you. Right? It's nonsense. But I think that kind of makes the emotional moments hit harder towards the end of the game, because you're going through this campy adventure and you don't necessarily see it coming. The ending is stuck with me, and I know it's stuck with a lot of people who've gone through Metal Gear Solid 3, because the whole genesis of the game is basically to kind of explain how the character of Big Boss became a villain, because he is the central antagonist of Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2, and his legacy kind of persists throughout Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2. But, like, he was this revered war hero and whatnot. Like, what made him sort of break bad? And that's the whole point of Metal Gear Solid 3, is kind of showing the origin story of this villain character. And at the end of the game, you get it. You completely understand why. And it just kind of gut punches you. And when it cuts to the credits with Star Sailor's Way to Fall, it's just kind of you're left as a bit of an emotional wreck in most instances. Like there's a distinct reason why the image of Big Boss saluting is used as like the perfect sad reaction gif. It hits hard. It's a great overall experience. Yeah, it's campy and silly as fuck. Again, Tommy gun. And the bosses aren't necessarily as well developed characters as Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 2, although their fights
But they throw bees. Who cares?
Yeah, they throw bees at you. It's fun. But the game is a hell of a lot of fun, and it gut punches you on an emotional level at the end. It's fantastic.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I knew a Metal Gear Solid would be on the list for you, and I had a feeling it might be 3.
Okay.
But yeah.
I don't know enough. I don't know nearly enough about Metal Gear Solid, other than that James likes it. But I was like, it's gonna be there somewhere.
It was gonna be 1 or 3 because 1 is fantastic, and Liquid Snake is probably my favorite antagonist of the entire series because he's such a unapologetic fucking shitheel. He is such a delightfully love to hate villain. And Metal Gear Solid 3 is probably the least Kojima pretentious of the Metal Gear games. And it has the least amount of silly shit in it, but just 3 hits you on a new level with emotional shit.
I still think he should have picked Revengeance, but you know.
Revengeance was up there as well. It especially because I Armstrong is my second favorite villain, and I kind of relate more and more to him each day, especially fuck this 24/7 trivia celebrity pop culture bullshit. That entire quote is basically me at this point.
He used to play ball. Could have gone pro if he hadn't joined the Navy.
Nanomachines, son. It's kind of ridiculous too, Kat. Just how a lot of instances where Kojima kind of inadvertently predicts the future, like in the final boss fight with the main bad guy, who is a senator of the United States. He's the antagonist, and he's trying to run for president. I want you to keep in mind that this game came out in 2013, Kat. At one point in Revengeance, he fucking screams out, "I'm going to make America great again." Did Trump rip off Kojima?
Oh my god. You know, sometimes life imitates art.
I like the idea of Don just sitting there with a red baseball cap on, and he's playing Revengeance and going, this guy's fucking huge. He's got some great ideas. I respect him. I want to be this man.
Second.
Stupendous.
Rules of nature.
Rules of nature. Oh god.
Standing here, I realize.
God damn it.
But yeah, no, Revengeance is a hell of a lot of fun, but 3 hits on a new level.
Hell yeah. All right, well, we are dipping back into From Software.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
And not quite in the direction you might think. Number 5, Armored Core Silent Line.
I knew it. I knew it was going to be Armored Core.
We're going Armored Core Silent Line. Now, this was a tough one because Armored Core has a shitload of really good titles that I was juggling. And Silent Line, it actually doesn't have even my favorite character in the franchise, Nine Ball Seraph. But Silent Line, it didn't do anything new. It was in kind of an era where I feel like at least From Software was pushing out the Armored Core games as bread and butter. You know, they were pushing them out because they sold well. It was an easy formula to replicate. You know, put out the game, put in the arena mode, and put in some missions, and you're good to go. And Silent Line was the first time that the driving narrative of the story was so solid that it didn't just feel like I was loading it up to just like, you know, waste some time in the arena and climb in the rankings and then dip out. Silent Line features a rogue AI that is part of a satellite system that releases this EMP charge and creates this null zone called the Silent Line. So anything that goes within this zone automatically shuts down, meaning none of the core units can get to it to stop it. And so it's sort of this like, almost fate of the world story of like, oh, we can't use our big badass robots to shut down this satellite that's got like, nuclear death lasers. But just something about the whole atmosphere of the game really, really kept me going. Beautiful amounts of customization for your cores, which like kind of is, the feature that most people get interested in when it comes to big mech games is, oh, how cool can I make my mech? Lots of great customization options. You can go for the big heavy tank treads and deck yourself out in heavy grenade launchers and shit. Or, you can do like I would do and go for the very lightweight agile units that are, really tricky to pin down. And of course, as with all great FromSoft games, you've got the Moonlight Blade coming through and making a representation. But yeah, Line just, again, it did nothing new, but it did everything that the franchise was known for at the peak of its ability. It did everything that you want from an Armored Core at 100%. And it's got some of the best multiplayer experiences I've ever had, because my brother and I had absolutely contrasting play styles. He had the really heavy, high damage explosive suits. I had the really nimble, quick machine gun, dip in and out sword fighter sort of thing. And we would just keep butting our heads together for hours. So yeah, it's so fucking solid. Silent Line. And great soundtrack. Great soundtrack. One of my favorite opening game themes of all time.
All right.
Damn. Nice pick. I know nothing about this franchise other than that you like it a lot.
Well, that should be all you need.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like I
so
know
I fully take your rec on that. I fully buy it. Good choice.
Bits and bobs about earlier Armored Core. I can't remember when Silent Line, like where that is, but like for me, my main jam was like Project Phantasma on PS1.
Mm-hmm. That
was the one I sunk the most hours into, but I was tangentially familiar since like a lot of my friends in high school were I think they went up, they kept playing all the way through like the 3 series or whatever, because there was always like, like Armored Core 1 and then like 2 spin-offs of that, and then Armored Core 2 and then like whatever spin-offs of that, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, Silent Line is part of the 3 series. Okay. Which, yeah, like a lot of my favorites were from the 2 era, like 2, Another Age, basically that series of like 3 or 4 games in a row where you just kept bashing your face into 9-ball Seraph over and over.
Yeah. Fucking 9-ball.
But yeah, Silent Line departed from that a little bit, but then just, yeah, the whole thing about like the different mercenary companies all trying to like out corpo bullshit each other while forgetting about the orbital death cannon. Like, can we team up and deal with that? Can we put aside the stocks for a minute? No.
Instead, we have to just focus on making our 2D pixel art emblem of anime titties, because that's what my friends did.
Well, naturally.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to represent anime titties on your mech.
Oh my god.
And you got to use the Moonlight Blade. Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
of course.
Moonlight Blade was fucking OP as shit in Project Phantasma, and I'm assuming it's kind of the same way in later entries.
Oh my god. Well, is that all for Armored Core?
Yeah, take us on number 5.
All right. So number 5 is surprisingly my only horror entry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the one that was James's 7. I think.
I have one on here that might also be on James's list, but we'll see.
Okay. Mine is Silent Hill 2.
It's not on my list.
Ooh.
I'm kidding, it's on my list.
Okay, that's what I fucking thought. That was your number 7, right? Yeah,
that's my number 7, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. So, to kick us off, because I think you you probably like this game more than I do, but I put it higher on the list because I am a sucker for a really solid ending. And I think Silent Hill 2 has one of the most solid endings of all games of all time.
So
I'm also a...
fun fact about the ending, that ending twist. When I first played the game when I was a kid, I hated it.
Yeah.
I actually...
I can imagine.
Did not like Silent Hill 2 because of that twist. I'm not... Even though it's a fucking 20-year-old goddamn game, I don't even want to say what the fucking twist is, just because it's that good. And
Sure.
if you want to play it, don't play the HD version if you can help it. Look up online for Silent Hill Enhanced Edition. That'll teach you how to play it on your PC, and it runs great. I went through it last year. But then that similar to... I'm not going to spoil it, but like similar to my number 4, which was also a game I did not like when I first played it. And also another entry on my list too. The more the older I got and the more that I thought about it and the more I matured and whatnot, the more I grew to appreciate that twist. And it really, how bold and brazen it was and how impactful and sad and uncomfortable it was. And yeah, that's the ending is part of the reason why it's on my list as well.
Yeah. I think I'm also a big sucker for like villain protagonists. Which, I guess it's a mild spoiler at this point, but I like that. Or like almost like unreliable narrator style, and it's just so good. I think the game itself, like it's been a really long time since I actually played through it. And I remember there was a lot of jank to it. It's a very old game, and certainly like don't play the HD Kindle collection. By God, like it's the worst possible way to experience that game. But yeah, just the ending alone, like I was like, it deserves a spot just because it did something so bold that really like games don't usually do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like it very much was like one of the first games where I was like, wow, this game is art.
Yeah.
This is a narrative that is so much more impactful because I've been playing as this man.
Yeah.
Instead of just like experiencing his story as a movie unfolding kind of thing.
The monster design and the symbolism behind
fantastic.
The monster design is outstanding.
Yeah.
The soundtrack is wonderful.
Yes.
It has probably my favorite track of the entire Silent Hill franchise, which is Promise Reprise. The little
Promise
piano.
Reprise is beautiful. Yes.
And like so much of that music, despite it being a horror game, is surprisingly chill and relaxing. Very, 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 very ambient. Like you can kind of kick back and relax to it. There's a lot of weird shit to it. Like the performances are not conventionally good.
Yes.
But it kind of like, it works because of their broken characters.
The HD collection tried to replace them with arguably better actors. Like I would definitely say that the performances are like quote unquote better performances. Yeah. But they clash so much with how the game is supposed to be experienced that it's just like no, he's supposed to be a just like random nobody kind of person, and like, the voice acting lends to that. If you're hearing Troy Baker, you're hearing Troy Baker.
Yeah, like not to shit on Troy Baker. He's a fine enough voice actor, even though he's my stalker. But like his voice,
in your head, James.
It's too professional of a voice for James Sunderland.
Professional, yeah.
Because James Sunderland is a broken character. And it's the same thing with the entire cast of Silent Hill 2 and even other Silent Hill games where they're broken, damaged people and they're not supposed to sound like super professional AAA gaming voice acting.
Absolutely.
And it just doesn't mesh at all. But yeah, like if you haven't played Silent Hill 2 and you want to, seriously, just Google Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition. the PC version is abandonware. You can easily find it, and you can easily get the game running on modern PC hardware, and it's outside of getting like an actual PlayStation 2 and playing it on your PlayStation 2, this is probably the best way to play it. Like, go for it. And they're still updating the enhanced edition to make it run smoother and look better and whatnot, because there's some technical hiccups, because the PC version was a notoriously shitty port, because that was back in the era where if it was a console exclusive and it got ported to PC, especially by a Japanese developer, it was a dumpster fire of a port. But because of the fans, Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition is what we should have gotten for Silent Hill HD Collection. Yeah, go play it.
Yep.
And
great choice.
Just be ready to curl up in a ball and go to sleep forever afterwards.
Yep. All right, James, now your number 5.
My number 5 is the 100% de facto best 3D platformer of all time, Banjo-Kazooie. I will not hear any arguments about this.
But
We won't talk about Bubsy.
Kingsley's Adventure.
It basically uses a lot of the same framework that Super Mario 64 used, since Rare was very close knit to Nintendo back in the period. But I really dig the levels and the attempts, the cheeky British humor. Something about it really completely clicked with me, especially with the whole collectathon element to it. I even have distinct memories of booting up my N64 copy as a kid and just kind of wandering around the levels, playing like almost make-believe, like my own like little story in my head, even though that's not how the game is supposed to be played, just because I was some fucking weird, stupid-ass kid who just wanted an excuse to play more Banjo-Kazooie. It's just a charming, fun 3D platformer. I adore it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had too much exposure with that series, but you've always spoken really highly of it.
It's the first game in particular. I've never finished the sequel, Banjo-Tooie, so like, I can't really comment too much about it. Nuts and Bolts is a fine game. It just shouldn't have been called Banjo-Kazooie. That's its biggest problem, because it's not really a 3D platformer. It's you build vehicles and explore world game. And it's not what anybody wanted for a years later sequel for Banjo. But no, it's a really solid, cheeky, fun little game. Bit of a hiccup maybe for some people at the end, where the final boss is a little hard unless you kind of go out of your way to get like the in-game super armor. And also right before the final boss, they make you go through this sort of a board game, mini game collection sort of thing. And involving answering trivia questions from shit that you experienced in the game. So, if you weren't necessarily paying attention, that can kind of fuck you over in the long run. But it's very charming. It's very fun. Kazooie's a piece of shit, and I love her for it. And Banjo's a wholesome little bear. It's great.
All right. Got some love for the old platform and generation.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Gotta do it.
Okay, so number 4, we're getting down to it.
Yeah.
I have already gushed quite a bit about this one on a previous episode of the podcast. A Cyberpunk 2077.
There you go.
The number 4 slot.
Damn.
Yeah, I will direct everyone's attention to the best of 2021 episode to hear me rant endlessly about my love for this game. Possibly the most powerful narrative I've encountered in a game. The storyline to this game is absolutely brilliant. Lulls, bugs, whatever. Get all that shit out of your system. With the release of the 1.5 patch for this game, it is now in the state that I feel like it should have been released at.
Gotcha.
This is now the level where I think people can put aside their reservations and jump into it and not be disappointed. You're still going to run into some issues. It's flawed. It's a flawed game. But what it stumbles on in some of those gameplay and stability elements it makes up for with the world that you're immersing yourself in, for the strong narrative that's guiding you along. I absolutely lost myself in this game for basically all of the COVID quarantine. Like, this was where I chose to live. I said, wow, real life sucks. LA blows. I'm going to go live in fake LA. And that made it so much more bearable. Yeah, it's got one of my favorite characters in a long time, Johnny Silverhand, who of course played by Keanu Reeves. It's at the point now after that 1.5 patch that I think people can put aside their pre-concocted notions about what the game is and was, and give it a fair shake. Yes, it was overhyped, and that was the fault of the overly ambitious CD Projekt Red, not knowing how to taper their expectations, and they promised way too much and couldn't deliver. But what they did deliver was, to me, absolutely memorable, and it's going to be one of my favorite games for a long time to come. I sunk 400 plus hours into this thing. It's fucking wonderful.
Nice.
So
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. I can't say I'm not surprised, but like I know how much you adore that game, so, and I think at some point I will be playing it because I think somebody redeemed it on my charity stream. So yeah, I'll definitely be hitting you up for tips.
I was really tempted to redeem that when I donated, when I saw the little tagline was like, yeah, if you donate this much to Ukraine, then I'll play Cyberpunk because Lee won't shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah, basically. Which, yeah, I probably still will at some point. Just gotta get all my other stuff out of the way first. So my number 4. Yeah, to absolutely no one's surprise, the Sherlock Holmes franchise had to make an appearance somewhere on this list.
I am surprised.
Yeah. So yeah, this is one of my favorite like adventure game franchises of all times, like right up there with Nancy Drew. I think even more so than Nancy Drew, they've like every single game Frogwares has made in this franchise has improved upon the previous one. To the point where I've seen them go from just like a very janky like student Unity project looking thing to like something actually compete like in some aspects of the game actually competing with like AAA in terms of like quality. So it was very, very tempting for me to pick their latest entry, Chapter 1, as my favorite, because I do think it's like the best of the best at this point. Like they've just continuously been improving since they started, and now it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see what they do next. But I decided to, kind of like eschew recency bias and just sort of be like, okay, no, but like what is your favorite of all of them, right? Because like I really like Chapter 1, but I don't know if it was necessarily my favorite. So instead I picked another recent one, and that is Sherlock Holmes: The Devil's Daughter.
You're the devil's son!
Yes. So specifically I picked this one because and this will be a running theme sort of with like the most of the rest of my most of the rest of my pick for top 10, and also a few of the previous ones, that I'm a sucker for a good ending and I'm a sucker for good closure. Like this was one where this was actually a thing that was set up in previous games. So I don't know how much you guys care about spoilers. I guess I'll just say minor spoilers for the game and for previous Sherlock Holmes games at this point. If you guys want me to shut up about it, speak now. Forever hold your peace. Okay. So in a previous game, I believe it was the Testament of Sherlock Holmes, or possibly the one before that. You fight your arch nemesis Moriarty is the main big bad, and that is revealed throughout the like as the story's going on, you're picking up the trail of this like horrible terrorist plot, and it turns out Moriarty's behind all of it. When you finally confront him at the end and kill him, you realize that he's been keeping a daughter on his like in his mansion this whole time. This is a girl you've never you've never even knew existed, but it's Moriarty. It's literally Moriarty's kid. And Holmes ends up adopting her. And then like 2 stories later, we kind of come back. This kid is a little bit more grown up now. She was like 5 or 6 at the at the end of at the end of Testament. And then Devil's Daughter picks up with her being like a teenager and sort of being like, turns out I'm the fucking daughter of a serial killer, you know? And really kind of like grappling with that and sort of, you know, fighting against you, her adoptive dad.
Did Scream rip off Sherlock Holmes, The Devil's Daughter?
Maybe a little bit. But yeah, it's just like, it's a really, really good story. It's really heartfelt. It again, they've been mastering that sort of like detective deduction board type gameplay for like the whole time, and this was one of the ones that really kind of like nailed it, where it like that kind of like has solidified, where chapter 1 didn't really improve on that formula so much because it was already so good in the previous games. And yeah, I thought Devil's Daughter was just such a phenomenal entry and such a nice like bow at the end of sort of Moriarty's story and sort of like Sherlock and his daughter's story, and it was really, really, really good. So yeah, that's why I picked that one. But I will also just say in general, like, support Frogwares because they're amazing and they're based in Ukraine, and so a lot of the dev team has been going through a lot of shit right now, and yeah, the more money we can throw their way, because they're just amazing devs, the better. So yeah. My
Hell
number
yeah.
4.
All right.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My number 4 is a game that I did not like when I first played it, but over the years it has become my favorite entry in this particular franchise, and that is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. It is, in some respects, overshadowed by Ocarina of Time, because Ocarina of Time was sort of the de facto, oh my god, best game of all time on the N64, and even for some people today for any platform.
Mm-hmm.
It was very influential and very revolutionary for its time. But similar to like my second favorite of the Zelda franchise, which is Link's Awakening, what I like about Majora's Mask is because of the fact that it wasn't sort of the main title, and it was sort of like the quickly put together sequel sort of thing. It was allowed to be weird. It was allowed to do something outside of Ganondorf and saving Princess Zelda, and it's dark and fatalistic and nihilistic with the whole 3-day cycle, and the apocalypse is coming. Like, a surface level, everything seems kind of bright and cheery, but like when you really kind of think about it, that Link is kind of trapped in this Groundhog's Day loop, living these 3 days over and over again, where the world is going to end and nobody knows that the world is going to end. It's kind of really dark and fucked up and depressing, especially when you start diving into some of the Mask side quests, like the lovers one, where like it literally takes until like the last 5 minutes of before the moon is going to crash into the planet before you're able to finish it off, and it's like you reunite this couple and they're fine with the fact that they're going to die in each other's arms. It's gut-wrenching of just like, you have this knowledge that like the weight of the world is literally on your shoulders. This entire world is just going to be gone in 3 days, and you have to keep reliving it over and over and over again, and nobody is aware of what you're doing, and nobody is aware that how close they are to death. And it's weird and it's fucked up, and it's interesting and unique. I remember one of the reasons why I didn't like it as a kid was I got really irrationally fixated on the fact that they changed the lip color of the Gorons. It's It's brown in Ocarina of Time, and then in Majora's Mask, it's like red or pink. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. They're rock people. Why would they have red or pink lips? This is dumb.
Hashtag not my Goron.
Yeah, not my Goron.
Oh my
But
god,
like,
Jam.
the other thing was like, I felt it was shorter as a kid, like as if longer makes better, because I just happened to plow through it faster than Ocarina of Time. But like, and it does have some frustrating elements, especially because you can't save the game until you like reset time, and that can be frustrating for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But I like how weird and experimental it is. Same thing with Link's Awakening, where it's just allowed to be different, and it doesn't have to try to do this, the typical tropes of Link has to rescue Zelda and stop Ganondorf and
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
it wasn't afraid to break the cycle.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this game
That's
also
cool.
This game also in particular has a very strong emphasis on like the NPCs of the world, since there's a shit ton of side quests in regards to collecting the masks, and you get to know the various NPCs and their quirks, and everybody has their own schedules and everything like that, and their own sub stories, and it feels like a much more lived in world, like with an incentive to talk to people as opposed to just
quest getting.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And a lot of it can be pretty sad, like especially when the fact that the main masks that you get are basically the spirits of deceased characters in that world, and you're like inhabiting their bodies, and there's even that running theory. I don't know how much credence it is. Nintendo will of course never acknowledge it, but like it's so dark and fucked up that the game is there's the running theory that Link is dead the entire time you're playing the game, and that it's the whole thing is just modeled after the stages of grief and acceptance and whatnot, of just Link accepting the fact that he is dead, especially since one of the big things, puzzle pieces, is like this: you use this song to make statues of the various different characters of masks that you're wearing, and one of them is Link, and he's the only quote-unquote living one while the rest are dead. It's interesting. I'm not saying the theory is accurate or not, but it's interesting to deep dive into.
It's also the earliest it's also the earliest example of a game I can think of that had you on a strict time limit to beat it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that, like, this is actually a really resounding recommendation for me personally, because one of the things that I really like about the worlds of games like Breath of the Wild and Death Stranding and Elden Ring to an extent, is that they're these kind of like dying or post-apocalyptic worlds that don't feel like, like the sort of like Fallout style of like, oh yeah, everybody's just like keeping on. It's just like there's an element of grief to it, with some moments of like hope shining through that just really, I don't know, really gels with me. That's one of the things I really liked about Breath of the Wild, was it felt like everyone in the game was sort of in mourning for, the fact that they lost the war, essentially, that evil prevailed and that the world was doomed, essentially.
Yeah.
And same thing with Death Stranding, same thing with Elden Ring to a degree. Like, it feels very much like a world in mourning that has some elements of cheerfulness as you progress. So hearing that about Majora's Mask is like, oh, I should play Majora's Mask.
you should. Like, a lot of the characters are doing their best to try to ignore or pretend that the world is not ending, even though it's very clear that the moon is getting closer and closer and closer, like, the entire time. And then by like the third day, a fair amount of them have like accepted it, or they're cowering in fear, or they're refusing to do it, like accept it, or some of them are like still insisting on doing their normal jobs because like, no, I can't quit my job and because the world is going to end and I get to see my loved ones. My job needs to get done, sort of thing. And it's like, but then you have to reset back to day one and relive these 3 days over and over and over again, and you just see this shit happen throughout the entire game constantly, and it's bleak and it's fucked up, but
damn,
like, yeah, it's a neat little weird fucked up little game.
Cool. Very cool.
I'm with that.
Yeah. All right.
Top 3.
Top 3.
Okay.
Let's go.
Honey Pop 1, Cam Studio 2.
So
Damn it,
to
James.
the
Spoiler alert, all right?
to the surprise of no one, I have a Kingdom Hearts game on the list.
Oh boy. Yep.
Boo!
But what is surprising is it's in the number 3 slot.
Okay.
And yeah, to me, the undisputed champion of the franchise, Kingdom Hearts 2. Okay, where do I start unloading all my fucking Kingdom Hearts baggage? A lot of this goes back. Let me lay back in the therapist chair, and I think it all started with my mother. And Kingdom Hearts is one of those games that I found like at the appropriate time in my life where I was starting to get into the more Japanese influence RPGs and getting into Final Fantasy. And this was a great game for like crossing that stream over into the Western audience. And Disney is something super accessible with a lot of aspects that play into a narrative like they were creating before it went off the rails batshit crazy. And so I got super in deep to Kingdom Hearts 1 and the whole like spirit of adventure about it, the great characters, the theme of young love and believing in yourself and all that great shit. And then the sequel, it took the parts about the first one that were a little subpar, like the combat system needed work. Some of the like side content, like the gummy ship for a great example, just things that needed tightening up. And Kingdom Hearts 2 took all of those aspects, cranked them up to 11, made one of the best third-person fighting styles I've ever experienced. The combat in Kingdom Hearts 2 is still way fucking fluid. I just played through the entire thing on my stream like 6 months ago. And found it was still just as good as the nostalgia goggles were making me feel it was. Outstanding cast of characters. Organization 13 is one of the best like crews of all time. Each one is a particular brand of shitbag with their own unique shitbag ability. But there's something to be said just for the enduring, no pun intended, heart of this franchise. There's a lot of ups and downs, and I think there's unfortunately a few more downs than ups. I haven't even been able to finish Kingdom Hearts 3. It's my favorite franchise, and I don't feel pulled to keep going. Just because some of those narrative decisions have really impacted the overall strength of the franchise to me. But that back-to-back banger of 1 and 2 is so important to my time growing up and developing who I was as a weeb. And then going
Perfect.
back and playing it again 6 months ago was like that reminder of, yeah, this really was that good, and this really did mean as much to you as you felt it did. There's for those of you who don't know me or watch my streams or anything and just hear my voice, I'm Mr. fucking metalhead guy. I'm the denim and leather jackets, and most of my life I've had the long hair and scowling, and then I'll hear Dearly Beloved and just start to weep like a child. There's a lot about this franchise that just resonates very deeply with me, and Kingdom Hearts 2 has to be in the top 3.
Nice.
Well, Lee,
Awesome.
when you walk
Good
away,
choice.
you won't hear me say, please, oh baby, piss on me, Oni-chan.
Baba booey, idas, idas, idas.
Oh my god. You dorks. All right. My number 3. A bit of a cheat.
Oh.
But technically, this is one game. It's been released as one game.
Okay.
My number 3 is the Phoenix Wright trilogy.
Because you cheated, your list is invalidated.
No, it's not. It's one game on
I'll
Steam.
allow
Sorry,
it.
we're
Jam.
rejecting it
One
from
game.
speedrun.com.
I'll allow it.
So yeah, I genuinely could not pick a single game out of this trilogy because I think they all just like flow into one another. The first time I experienced them was as in one solid fucking block where just Will and I would just play these games together. Yeah, it's weird that this made my list because it was not one of the first like detective-y kind of games that I experienced. But like there's something about like, the experience of playing these games that really does like make it. Like I mean, there's a lot of games I haven't played yet that I think might rank higher. Like Disco Elysium's one that's been recommended to me a lot, but the Phoenix Wright games are kind of like I played them in college, and I just absolutely adored them from like for every aspect of them, right? Like it's just like the gameplay that itself is really fun. It's like a nice little puzzle. It's a lot of like deduction type stuff, some social, some just like from evidence. Sometimes it's a little bit asinine where you're like trying to piece together clues and like either you're a little bit ahead of the game because like you figured out like, oh, I need to do this to prove that this guy's the murderer, but like the game isn't there yet, so you need to like do all the steps in between the conclusion you've already come to. Or it asks you to make like a really absurd leap in logic that's just like, why would I ever think of this? Like, why would this be the thing that I, put two and two together? You're asking me to connect like A to 19 for some reason instead of A to Z. But I think that it has a lot of intrigue, a lot of really good mystery, a lot of heart, a lot of humor. Fucking absolute shout out to the localization team for these games because, like, playing with Will obviously originally played these games in Japanese. And a lot of the fun that I had playing them with him was that he would, we'd come to a part where there was a joke, right? Like a lot of the joke, there are a lot of puns with character names or like little inside jokes about certain things. And he would always like stop and be like, "Oh man, that's so interesting that they translated it that way because in Japanese, like it's this other name, right?" And I was like, "Oh, they're doing it this way because, in English in America, this is what we construe this as." So it was this nice kind of like cultural coming together of like him and I could both be like, "Oh, this is a funny joke in English and Japanese because the Loke team is so fucking good," right? Like, and it's just really solid. And rightly so. They've been remastered and ported to, that you can play them on PC. The whole trilogy is one game on Steam, so you can just like knock the whole thing out. And yeah, they're fantastic games. They're very very fun. I think they're like one of the ultimate like kind of like detective game experiences where like you have equal parts actually like going out into the field and like gathering clues and evidence and like interviewing people, and then equal parts courtroom drama that you just get to play out and like present the evidence at the opportune times, and it's so good. It's so great.
Yeah, and shout out to one of the best character theme songs of all time, "The Fragrance of Dark Coffee."
Oh yeah. Well, I don't think that's the original trilogy.
No? Oh damn.
No. That's Godot, right?
Yeah, that's Godot.
Godot is
Is he later in the
is
franchise?
Apollo Justice, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really thought you were gonna pick the one with Lolly Watson.
No, I do like those games, but they have I do like the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I think they have pacing issues more so than the original trilogy, and also, yeah, I think the Lolly Watson thing is weird. You get over it because like she's
you love
okay
Lolly
by the
Watson.
end. Yeah, I mean she is a great character by the end, but like it takes a while to get there, and at first you're just like, this is fucking weird. Why is this happening? And then you slowly realize like, oh, he's actually like basically her dad, except that he's he's like so immature that it's just like almost like the opposite relationship where like she's more mature than he is, even though she's 10 years old. Yeah, I won't make excuses. It's fucking weird, but it does get good at the end. Like there's a really sweet moment at the end that makes up for a lot of the weirdness. But yeah, I did not pick that one just because I think the first three are way more solid and like they're so interconnected because like the DL6 I think is the case is the big it's like this big case that happened before Phoenix Wright was a lawyer, before any of like the current like day stuff, but it like permeates the entire the entire series in the first three. Like basically like DL6 is like the fucking case that everything comes back to. And so it's so cool and interconnected, and you like this overarching plot is just so fascinating, and like, oh, you really sink your teeth into it. You're just like, yes, give me more. I want to learn more about what happened back then and who these people are, and oh, a secret twist, and yeah, it's great.
Hell yeah.
Right.
Great franchise.
Good
That's my
call.
number 3.
So my number 3 is the most recent release on my list, and it's from 2009, to give you an idea on how.
Oh my god, damn.
Like, yeah,
Holy
like,
shit.
that's the most recent release. It has a
Uh-huh.
lot in common with Majora's Mask and Silent Hill 2 in the sense that I did not like this game when I first played it, but it also has a commonality with Kingsfield and Drakengard in the sense that I did not fully completely go through this game when it first came out. I gave up on it pretty quick, and I only went through it recently in the last 5 years or so, and that is the original Demon Souls.
Yeah.
That
Hell yeah.
is probably my favorite from software game. There's no real nostalgia bias from it because, again, I hated it when I first played it. I don't want to go into too much detail. I kind of went into that with the podcast on Elden Ring. It's definitely their jankiest since like they were discovering this formula and creating this sort of genre at the time. But there's something about the atmosphere, especially with like stuff like the Tower of Latria, that the rest of their subsequent games didn't quite recapture. Even the remake of Demon Souls loses a fair bit of the atmosphere that the PS3 version had. The story is a bit more clear cut and easier to follow than a lot of the subsequent Dark Souls games and Bloodborne and Elden Ring. It still has its vagueness, and it still has its, you know, the FromSoft charms of piecing things together through like item descriptions and whatnot. But it's definitely a lot more easier to follow, a lot more clear cut. It's very fatalistic and nihilistic and morally gray in a lot of instances. Like one of my favorite things involves the greater fiend, Maiden Astraea. She is the final boss of the Valley of Defilement, and her whole thing is she was this like sort of whole like super religious maiden, and like this basically like almost like a saint, right? And she traveled to the Valley of Defilement on a pilgrimage, and the Valley of Defilement is basically this forsaken valley that the world and the kingdom kind of throw the abandoned into, and they're garbage, and it's where dead bodies are thrown, dead babies are thrown, etc. And she goes there and she just sees how awful it is there, and it breaks her heart, and it causes her to like question her entire faith of just like, how can my God exist or be pure if these people are suffering so. And she becomes a demon in order to help them and cure them and cleanse them. So she's doing heinously evil shit of just murdering countless innocent civilians to appease the great old one and collect souls for him, so she can heal these people who've been abandoned and just forgotten about for God knows how long, and it's an interesting like little bit of a moral dilemma of just like you have to kill her even though she's saving all these people because she's doing all this other evil vile shit and you need to do it otherwise the world's going to end, but she's helping all these other innocent like these people who just were forgotten and abandoned and thrown in there. And more particularly too like the whole sub story with Princess Strava hits really hard as well, where he's the son of King Alant. King Alant is of course the one of the major antagonists of the game, since he is the one responsible for summoning and awakening the Great Old One, in order for his kingdom to prosper. And he was out of town basically when all this chaos and shit went down. And
he just dipped.
And Astrava has come back to the kingdom because he's heard the rumors about his father being responsible for this demon scourge. And he does not want to believe it. And he's a coward and he's completely inept and he is not fit to survive this harsh hellscape. But he braves it anyway because he does not want to believe that his father's responsible. And the ending of his quest is so fucking heartbreaking. Like it just hits really, really hard. Game's janky and the later FromSoft games are far more polished, but I don't know, just something about Demon's Souls makes it stand out in comparison to the rest of their later games.
And it first gave us patches.
And it gave us patches, that delightfully wonderful
That
piece
scamp.
of shit.
That little
damn it.
rapscallion.
Patches is the best. Listen, you appreciate patches, Cat. Except for in Bloodborne, where he's a
Patches.
spider.
Do I?
Follow the rainbow path.
I'm not saying you do. I'm saying you have to. You better appreciate him. Except for in Bloodborne when he's a spider.
Okay.
Yeah, spider patches. Well, okay.
Yeah, number two.
Number two.
All right.
I think that everybody who gets serious about gaming and video games and the culture in general, who like it when it transcends that just like being a hobby to being something else, everyone reaches that point where they realize that video games have the ability to be high art.
You played Gex, didn't you?
Absolutely. You know, whether it's visual storytelling or the way music is interwoven into something, everybody has that first time they play a game and just take a step back and go, this is something massive. And to me, that was Shadow of the Colossus.
Damn. Nice.
Shadow of the Colossus is the first time that I looked at a video game and went, this has the ability to be so much more than like what I thought was capable. Because up until the point I played that, it was a lot of really fun shit, fighting games and all kinds of stuff I still love to this day. But it was like that first time that you experience like, there's a grander type of storytelling that can be done. And a cinematic level of atmosphere that can be achieved. And with a very minimal amount of like get the ball rolling exposition, like Shadow of the Colossus just throws you into the shit.
Yeah, it does.
Just goes, here's a world. You're a dude and you got a horse and this chick is sleeping. And you have to wake her up by facing these 16 ancient entities. And just that slow burning, almost like resentment you start to build within yourself every time you do it. Because every time you kill one of the colossi, you're realizing that like the land around you is starting to become less vibrant. The music is starting to shift in subtle ways to convey that something of pure natural beauty has been killed. You start to feel awful every time you kill one of these things. And it's just such a profound piece of storytelling that I'm glad I got to experience when I was, when it came out when I was young.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hell yeah.
I haven't gotten a chance to play the remastered version of it that came out recently.
I heard it's actually pretty good.
Yeah,
It's-
it looks pretty
very
groovy.
true.
It's very good. It, at least for me, as just a stickler for like art style, elements of like the original atmosphere feel a bit off because of it's kind of a thing of just Bluepoint does amazing jobs remaking shit, but
Mm-hmm.
like something about like them taking something and translating it into next gen, it loses a bit.
Sure.
It's
I-
very hard, but it's
think, though,
still a damn good fucking game.
Yeah,
at its core.
I think though in general it's not the HD collection, right?
Well,
Like,
Bluepoint also did the HD collection, and the HD collection is fucking fantastic. That's just a straight up.
No, the Silent Hill HD collection.
Oh
games.
yeah. No,
It's not the HD collection.
No, Bluepoint has never
I was gonna
done
say
a.
like, whoa, what the fuck just happened
Yeah,
here?
yeah,
Like,
no. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing, Kat, is because Bluepoint has remastered it and then they remade it. So it's like they had the Ico Shadow of the Colossus collection and then this new remake and whatnot.
Sure.
Yes.
No, but I'm saying it's an actually competent remake.
Yeah, that's
as opposed to
It's not like
but
Silent Hill
yeah,
HD
I mean,
or
you
Warcraft
probably
3.
will lose. You probably will lose a thing or two just because by the very nature of that's
it's
how stuff happens.
it's kind of like with me with Demon's Souls PS5. Like you lost a bit, but it's still at its core, it's still a damn good game, and I'm sure you'd like the PS4 Shadow of the Colossus if you ever went through it.
Yeah, there's just something very, very unique when it's your first game of that type too, because a whole lot like this wasn't done back in the day.
No, it
where
wasn't.
like here's the game, it's 16 boss fights and that's it, and you get a whole world to explore that isn't filled with mobs or puzzles, it's journeying to the next boss and having that kind of like encroaching dread each time.
Yeah.
And not because of, like, what cool thing is this going to be? Which there's that cool element of discovery of like, oh, this one flies, or this one's in a water arena. That's cool. The dread is in, I don't want to have that feeling of plunging the sword into its seal and watching the last of its life bar go away. Because every time it happens, it cuts to a widescreen cutscene of the poor thing crumbling on itself, like with a big audio swell.
Yep.
Just like, and then like how Dark Souls or Elden Ring will flash like the prey defeated thing. They should just flash some text that says like, "Are you happy now?"
Like, you fucking monster.
Serenity shattered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Oh my god.
Except for that
Shadow
stupid
of the
small bull
Colossus.
thing. Fuck that thing.
Of all the best boys, he is the weakest. And then last note about it is just the other day on Reddit, Reddit was getting into a fine argument because someone posted, hey, like, I know recency bias is a thing, but like, I don't know, just with the way he controls and everything, is Torrent the best horse we've had in gaming so far?
No.
And everyone, like Q Gary Oldman, everyone came out of hiding and said somebody didn't play Shadow of the Colossus because you're sleeping on aggro, my boy.
Aggro's great, but
yeah,
I gotta go with Epona for best horse.
Oh, that's a good one.
Epona's too. Epona is such a stubborn personality that I love her. Specifically, Ocarina, Majora, Epona. Twilight Epona's like whatever, I don't care.
I loved the Red Dead 2 horses. Even though I think a lot of that game, it has super jank controls. By the time you get your first horse and you're like used to the jank, they control like a dream.
Well, and I don't know if you want to talk about jank horses. Not to spoil your Witcher 3 playthrough.
Oh God, no.
Roach.
Oh boy. If a horse could T-pose, it would be Roach.
The bugs with Roach are pretty great.
Absolutely.
Roach showing up on the top of the barn is like one of my favorite. That's a great example of a bug that got embraced like
Yep.
as a meme. Like
Yep.
Roach showing up on the barn. CD Projekt Red made that the official art of Roach in Gwent.
Yeah,
Is him on top
Yep.
of the barn.
I remember also CD Projekt
Perfect.
Red for an April Fool's Day joke. They did a dev diary of Roach, and it was just all the bugs that you could do with Roach.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I mean, you know, you want to talk horses breaking the game. Skyrim also on the list.
Oh jeez.
those things defy every law known to man and some unknown to man.
I love that there's so many options. This could be a podcast topic. Like, hey, welcome to Gooncast. We're talking about top 10 best gaming horses.
Well, we definitely need
Absolutely.
Caroline on. that
Oh
one.
yes, Caroline will be the guest goon for that.
And it's just like, all of you are wrong. It's this horse because of this reason.
Yep.
No, shut up. It's this horse. I don't
Abso-friggin-lutely.
fucking care. It's like, yeah, but Epona and Ocarina, I don't play trash games. All right, Caroline, come on.
Yep. Oh man.
So yeah, number 2 for me is Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, good pick, good pick.
Speaking of good boy horses, perfect seg to my number 2.
All right.
So this was actually this is also a very difficult. Well, okay, no, this particular spot was not difficult because I knew this game would probably take this spot. However, Caroline had actually messaged me after looking through my list, and she was like, "I'm so surprised that one of these other games wasn't on your list." Because, like, you fucking love these games. Like, you talk about them all the time. And I was like, I know, I do. But, like, I really didn't want the list to be so dominated with this one particular studio. And I think that the game that ended up at my number 2 just kind of, like, fixes all of the problems. Like, I don't have that many gripes with the other games they made. But the gripes I did have, my number 2, like, resolved all of those and then some.
Mm-hmm.
So my number 2 is Ghost of Tsushima.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
yeah, I think I might win for most recent game, maybe. So that was 2020.
I
Yeah.
had Elden Ring, but
Oh, you did have Elden Ring. Never mind.
Yeah, you nerd, loser.
mind. I forgot about that, the number 10. But yeah, Ghost of Tsushima, I think just hit it out of the park in almost every single aspect. The open world was beautiful, simple, elegant, a joy to explore. You know, it felt like everything, you know, like it was small. It didn't feel super overwhelming, to the point where, like, people I know who don't like open worlds were telling me, like, yeah, I actually really liked exploring Ghost of Tsushima because it felt like as I was exploring, it wasn't like I was, you know, like doing a radio tower in a Ubisoft game and finding like 800 fucking side missions under a rock and just being like, oh fuck, here we go again, you know? It was
You
just
don't like collecting garbage though?
No, you know, that's the thing. It's just like, yeah, you just run around this world. You've got, you know, a wonderful little horse companion you go around with, and you're just the combat flow is so good. There's, you know, not the extensiveness of Elden Ring by any means, but you know, there's stealth aspects, there's, you know, just straight up you know, dueling. There's, you know, there's a bunch of different stances you can use that do different things. There's just the combat is so rich and fluid, and I liked it so much that, like, after my first playthrough, where I played through on moderate, because I was just like, oh, you know, there's no difficulty trophy, I'm not going to challenge myself. I was like, fuck, I want to challenge myself. I loved the combat so much. I played it again on the hardest difficulty just because I wanted to. And yeah, the one-on-one duels, the like boss fights are just fucking fantastic. The story is amazing. I cried no less than 3 times through the story. There's so many moments that I just adored. And I think they really nailed something that Sucker Punch has been going for the entire time, which is the, like, moral choice system. I know I watched Yahtzee's review on it. He hated that the game came down to a moral choice at the end. But here's the thing. the moral choice at the end of Ghost of Tsushima, it has nothing to do with how you've played the game previously. Like unlike Infamous, where basically like if you've been being evil and killing civilians, you're basically locked into the evil ending. Versus like if you've been being good, you're basically locked into the good ending. And if you've been playing in the middle, you can pick either one, but neither of them really fit your character very well. You know, like it's like the good ending is way too goody two shoes, and the evil ending is just like way too cartoonish, mustache twirling evil. The way Ghost of Tsushima handled their morality, where it was all these shades of gray, where there really was no like purely right or purely wrong. Each person had their reasoning behind, you know, their own personal lines in the sand, and where you took the main character just purely depended on your style. And at the very end of the game, that final moral choice that they give you, I have heard from so many people arguments for both things, and it's purely down to how you played and interpreted the game. So I literally think they just absolutely nailed the moral choice system that they've been kind of like, you know, experimenting with for the course of, you know, since Infamous 1, right? I think Ghost just perfectly encapsulated it, and I won't spoil the ending, but
yeah, I feel like I do want to play this one at some point.
Yes, and you 100% should. I think you would love it. It's fairly short. It's not an incredibly long experience considering it's open world. It's just like, you know, it's clearly somewhat low budget, but like it's also tech-wise, it's so fucking impressive because there's virtually no loading. When you fast travel, you can fast travel across the entire fucking island, and there's no loading. And I ended up talking to I got into the beta for the multiplayer, and specifically it was like a closed Sony beta, and I ended up partnered up with somebody from Sony Santa Monica, like a programmer that I used to work with. And I was just like, oh my god, like, you know, cool. We caught up a little bit, and then we started just gushing about Ghost because both of us were just like so impressed. And I ended up asking him because I'm like, you know, I'm not a programmer. I don't understand to an extreme amount the intricacies of those systems, but like, is it impressive? The like, you know, the sheer lack of loading screens and all that stuff in Ghost. And he's like, oh my god, yes, and just like proceeded to gush endlessly about how, like, you know, they were sitting around the water cooler after Ghost came out and trying to be like, figure out like, how the fuck did they do this? Like, how did they get this so streamlined? And just like, oh, it's like it's the tops. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I've been meaning to go back and play it again on stream because I want to play the DLC because I haven't yet. But I've just been waiting for like getting time to actually stream it, and I probably want to actually just like replay the entire game just to, you know, experience it all over again because I just love it. But yeah, Ghost is fantastic.
I haven't looked too much into it, but as far as like the overworld and and all that, it did it kind of do the Elden Ring thing first of like, you don't get objectives. There's things in the environment that are showing you which way to go. Of like something about the way the wind blows.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So yes and no. Like it does have much more of a like a structure of it has more structure than Elden Ring in terms of like actually telling you what to do next. But if you like so they have, you know, like mission tracking and stuff. But if you track a mission, it doesn't do the like Ubisoft thing of like it just pops a marker down on your map and then you just have to like go there with like the HUD. Instead, like it's, you know, it's basically like there's not really a whole lot of like UI elements showing you, but when you swipe up on the touchpad, the wind will blow and it'll show you the direction to head.
Okay, that's cool.
It's very nice. It's very cool. Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of like armor sets you can get that give you different perks, different boosts. I remember I was really big into, on my second playthrough, I was big into duels because dueling is super fun. I think my only criticism for the game is that the AI is not great.
Okay.
Which is also a criticism I had for Elden Ring, and I loved Elden Ring too. So, you know, it was just it was just kind of like they had stealth elements, but the AI was like so stupid when it came to stealth that the stealth just felt too easy. So I was just like, I'm not gonna do, like I'll stealth if I'm like really struggling with an area, but like otherwise I'm just like, no, I'd rather do it this way. Also, there are some moments I think where, narratively the game will kind of like lock you into a play style. Like there's some missions that will fail if you break stealth, which I thought was a little bit of a like a point not in its favor, because it's kind of like, oh well, so much of the game has given me the freedom to pick whatever style of whatever play style I want, and then you're just locking me into stealth because you want this to be a stealth mission. Like, all right, that I get it, but a little disappointing. So those are my gripes. Those are my only gripes, though. Otherwise, it's number 2 on my best of all time list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jam?
My number 2 is the best video game remake of all time and the best survival horror game of all time. It's the Resident Evil GameCube remake. It's
Oh.
I thought this would be your number 1.
Nope.
Oh shit.
Its atmosphere is fantastic. It takes the basic concept of Resident Evil 1 and classes it up, makes it a far more classy experience. I mean, yeah, it's still cheesy and campy. It's fucking Resident Evil. What are you gonna fucking do? But like, Resident Evil 1 has a lot of OG PS1 Resident Evil 1. Its color palette, for lack of a better explanation, is more giallo, where it's like weird bright colors for like a lot of the mansion and whatnot. It's interesting and it's weird, and it doesn't necessarily feel like particularly lived in. Like you'll see like yellow walls or red walls or purple walls or whatever. It's kind of wild and whatnot. But Resident Evil 1 Remake, it feels like a spooky haunted house mansion. It is really intense gothic horror atmosphere. Voice acting is not great, but it's a step up from the camp cheese of Resident Evil 96. It is a stunning looking game, even 20 years later, because it was a pre-rendered backgrounds with 3D models. So like, yeah, there's elements of it that show its age for sure, but like the fact that this is a GameCube game and it looks as good as it does is kind of insane. It's arguably I don't even think arguably. It's like the second to last major fixed camera angle pre-rendered background survival horror game from like a AAA company, and it is a stunner. And if you're okay with tank controls, which I know is a barrier to entry for a fair amount of people, although the remaster it has 3D movement for if that's your more style. But yeah, if you can get past the tank controls, it plays really, really well. It is sort of the pinnacle of what Capcom had been kind of evolving the franchise into until they sort of soft rebooted the gameplay with Resident Evil 4. So much so that like everybody was kind of wondering what Resident Evil 2 would have been like in that style after Resident Evil 1 Remake came out, just because it was universally kind of accepted that Resident Evil 2 was better than PS1 Resident Evil 1. So it was like, oh my god, if Resident Evil 1 can be this fucking good, what could Resident Evil 2 be? And we never really got an answer to that, because the Resident Evil 2 remake we did get is much more conventional, over the shoulder, as opposed to, how it was back then. And I don't want to get into too much about like the cut content and truncated stuff and whatnot, but just, yeah, it's pinnacle survival horror. It handles everything really well, and it has some fun little unlockable extras like invisible enemy mode, and Real Survivor, where one of the ideas with Resident Evil 1 on PS1 was that you could store items in the item box, but none of the item boxes were linked. And they decided to scrap that because they wanted something more player favoring, but as a bonus unlockable for the remake, they included that as an option, where you have to strategize about where you're leaving your items in what box, because it's going to stay there. And it's fun. And then there's also their one dangerous zombie mode where there is a zombie with a flak jacket covered in grenades, and you're not allowed to kill it because if you shoot it, it explodes and blows up a mansion, and it pops up in various different rooms.
That's hilarious.
And it has Crimson Heads, which is something that everybody
God.
wants to see in the franchise again, where it's like you killed a zombie, but it's not, didn't get decapitated, and you didn't set it on fire. So it is going to come back, and it's going to be far more vicious and aggressive and do a hell of a lot more damage, and it keeps you on your toes. And the other neat thing too is it fucked with players who were familiar with the first game, where certain scripted jump scares were tweaked or altered, so they keep you on your toes. Like the famous hallway in Resident Evil 1, where if you go through it, dogs burst through the window, and you know, you gotta fend off some zombie dogs in this hallway. And in the Resident Evil remake, when you go through that hallway, the window cracks, but nothing comes through it, and you're like, oh, what the fuck? Where are the dogs? Oh, there's no dogs. But then later on in the game, when you go back through that hallway, thinking that, okay, maybe they just cut this. Nope, that's when the zombies break through, or the zombie dogs break through. And it's like, that's cute. It's a nice way to fuck with veterans, and it's a perfect fucking survival horror game, in my opinion.
I'm a little disappointed you did not select Kendo's cut
Yeah,
for
what the
your
hell?
Resident Evil
Damn.
choice.
Ken-
But I respect your.
Mods are excluded. Mods are their own thing. Resident Evil 2
Wow.
Resident Evil 2 on PS1/PC is my second favorite Resident Evil game of all time. So, by extension, Kendo's Cut would be my second favorite Resident Evil game of all time.
All right. I'll allow it.
All right, number 1.
Down to it.
Oh my god. All right, Lee.
Oh, and
Start us off with
quick-
your favorite game of all time.
Before we continue though, because I forgot to mention this, this is our 1-year anniversary episode, yeah? And
Yeah.
we specifically accidentally timed it where we are literally recording on the exact day that we recorded the first podcast.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I just wanted to
Wow.
bring that up because
Happy
I forgot to
anniversary,
mention.
you
Yeah.
goons.
Happy anniversary, fuckers. 1 year.
Yeah,
1 year gooning it up.
of course y'all aren't getting this until like a week later because
Yeah.
fuck you.
They'll get it when we goddamn tell you get it.
I'll get it when Lee writes bars.
Well, naturally, I'm always writing bars. Okay, so this one. Okay, so my number 1. It's interesting because it was undoubtedly my favorite game for a long, long time. And every so often, I'll reinstall it and start playing it again just to see, like, you know, damn, does it still hold up? Is it still as good as I remember? And then after, you know, playing it for hours and realizing that nostalgia goggles had nothing to do with it, that it is just that fucking great, you realize that's why it was the most enjoyed competitive sport in South Korea for so long. StarCraft is the best game of all time.
Wow. Damn.
StarCraft is the shit. Specifically with the expansion Brood War. There has never been a more balanced real-time strategy game. It laid the foundation for what other RTSs try to mimic. Which, yes, ironically, StarCraft boosted a lot of their imagery and archetypes from other franchises. There's a lot of influence from Warhammer, but StarCraft carved out its own slice of history, basically, because this game became so popular that stadiums were selling out to watch people go one-on-one in this game. The amount of, like, mental acrobatics that would have to go on at the high tier of watching these players do their thing was astounding. Like, if y'all don't know what I'm talking about, Google any professional StarCraft player. YouTube rather, there will be videos of like what their screens look like during games, and it's mind bending what they're doing. But yeah, it's the most well balanced RTS ever made. 3 factions, the Terrans, the Zerg, the Protoss, who have all kind of maintained their cultural relevance after all these years. Zergling Rush is, a meme that's endured fucking forever. You must construct additional pylons, all that good shit. The plot lines that Blizzard has written have become very copy-paste, very like the way they've tried to progress the World of Warcraft storyline in the last decade. They've drained their well, but back in the day, back in the early good years, StarCraft had one of the greatest video game storylines going. James Raynor is, I think, my favorite video game protagonist of all time. There's just so much to be said for a game that came out, Jesus Christ, how many years ago now? Getting close to 30 years?
Damn.
Where it's still the champion of its genre.
Yeah.
There is not a real-time strategy game that can compare with it on the level it went out at. Not even its own sequel. StarCraft 2 tried. It tried very hard. But yeah, and like I said, every so often I reinstall it, jump back into that bad boy, and just see okay, do I still got it? And it's still just as fun as it was when I was a kid. I remember the first day I played it. My dad was still computer gaming at the time, and he picked me up from school one day and said oh, I downloaded this demo last night. You got to try this out. And he let me hop on and play StarCraft when I was I don't know, 4 or 5. And it was all over from there. But yeah, it's a lasting classic. It's number 1 near and dear to my heart. Every time I think something else might edge it out, it feels dirty. I can't do anything but put this one in the number 1 spot. So StarCraft Brood War, my favorite game of all time.
Nice. Awesome. Damn. That is quite the pick. Okay. My number 1. This one was pretty tricky for me, actually. Mostly because I can't pick an entire franchise.
Yeah, I feel like I know which franchise you're going with.
Yep. It's Myst.
Yep.
But many times I've said that my favorite game of all time is the original Myst. And that is still true. I think it is my favorite game of all time. But when I was making this top 10 list, I was kind of okay, but I feel like I sort of love Myst. I love Myst in a vacuum, but I also really love what it spawned. And I kept asking myself, is there anything in that list that I love more than the first game? Mm-hmm. In terms of is there anything that supersedes the original Myst in terms of anything? And I would say yes. I would say a lot of its sequels do surpass it in certain elements. Riven, I think, would be probably my favorite for puzzle design, and world design, just because I adore sections of that game, just absolutely phenomenal. I think Exile, which is the 3rd game, really brought a lot to the table. I think it was super cool that Brad Dourif is the villain in the game.
Fucking Brad.
Yeah, he's a huge fan of the series, and he actually sought them out to be I would like to be in your game, please. Yeah, he's obviously a phenomenal actor. And with that game, we kind of get a little bit more of an insight into the story. Riven definitely introduced a little bit more of the narrative. The first Myst is very narrative light, but you do get some hints of there's a man here, looking leaving notes for his wife, and you slowly learn that he's got 2 kids sons who are pretty much delinquents. And you meet them in the course of the story of Myst, and you learn that, they're both awful people. They try to trick you into freeing them, but if you free either of them, they just kill you and trap you, or they trap you in their books forever and then burn the book. Yeah, and so yeah, like that in and of itself is maybe like not the most intriguing narrative to people, but like seeing Riven expand on that, where you learn about Atris's father and how Atris's father is also not a very good person, and sort of the history of the the Dunny, the race of people who are writing these, or who used to write these books, who were genocided. And then Exile kind of brings more of that home in that Brad Dourif's character, I think his name is Savedro, if I remember correctly. He is a victim of the Atris's sons, like, book burnings, where his way home was destroyed by them. His age was destroyed by them. And so you basically, like, him coming back to seek vengeance on Atris is like a reckoning for what the brothers did. But my pick for number 1 is the 4th entry in the, like, baseline Myst series. It's called Revelation. It's a very generic name. But it is the game where Cirrus and Akinar come back, and we finally get closure on the whole family. And to me, it's just like it has all of the, the great world designs, the amazing, like, top tier, not to be, like, still not dethroned for me, puzzle designs. It has all of that the previous games had, but it also, like, brings the story to a satisfying conclusion where, like, essentially you are back, and, like, essentially it's Atris's daughter Yisha, who was a baby in exile. She's now, like, a young girl, a teenager. I think she's like 12 or 13 or something like that. And he's starting to teach her how to write ages. He's starting to teach her the art of writing these books that allow you to, make your own worlds. And him and his wife, him and Catherine have sort of been, it's been like over a decade since they imprisoned their sons, and, like, they're kind of starting to regret it, and kind of starting to think maybe they've learned their lessons now. Maybe they've been rehabilitated. Maybe we should let them back out. And yeah, a lot happens, and it's such a good game. It's like, it's got more narrative, more action than the previous ones. It's definitely got more of a like a forward thrust. There's less kind of like zen, just like chill and solve puzzles, because essentially the brothers capture Yisha, and, like, you're out to rescue Atris's daughter. And yeah,
there's more of a sense of urgency.
There's more of a sense of urgency, but, like, I don't know, just the way it's just like the perfect cap on this franchise. Again, a lot of my entries have been sort of like end of an era type entries, or, the ending is the thing that really gets me about them. And this one is just, it's a really phenomenal ending to the brothers, to the family. There is technically a 5th Myst in the, like, mainline games. It's not very good. It also takes place, I think, 100 some years in the future, and the only connection you have to the previous games is you'll see like hollow recordings of Yisha as an adult. She's, like, talking about, like, her attempts to rebuild the Dunny, and it's really not an interesting conclusion. I only got about halfway through it, and I couldn't continue. I couldn't keep going. I was just kind of like, I don't like this as much. I just felt like 4 was, like, the perfect ending for me. It tied everything together. It left the family in a really, like, solid place, and yeah, it's great. Also, phenomenal soundtrack. All of the Myst games, I think, have had amazing soundtracks. Robin Miller did the originals. He's one of the, like, brothers, and, like, he did a lot of the art for the originals too. But they switched to Jack Wall for Myst 3, I think. And then Myst 4 is Jack Wall and Peter Gabriel.
What?
Yeah. Peter Gabriel has
Right on.
has music on the soundtrack. Yeah. He specifically specifically one of the ages is very like mystical, dreamlike. You actually enter people's dreams in it. And yeah, he does a lot of the music for that age. That's fucking wild. I think if I can't pick the entire franchise of the you know the 4 Myst games that I adore, I think Myst 4 is probably my favorite of the 4. Just as a complete experience, as like the total package. Where I love everything about it, but especially I love the story and I love the conclusion it comes to.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah.
All right, James, tell us why your favorite game of all time is Shaq Fu.
It's Illusion of Gaia.
Yep.
It's
There you go.
Illusion
There
of
you
Gaia
go.
is the favorite game of all time. It's the game I play literally every year on or around my birthday. It's a 2D top-down game reminiscent of like old school Zelda games. It was published by Enix, developed by Quintet. Is the sequel to Soul Blazer and prequel to Terranigma. I played this game even before I played A Link to the Past. This is definitely the 100% nostalgia pick. It's the very first game that I ever 100% completed as a child. This is the game that got me interested in mythology and legends and history. The game is set basically in roughly the equivalent of 16th century Earth, except for Earth is kind of all rearranged continent-wise. And all of the dungeons of this game are based off of real-world locations or locations from human mythology and legend and whatnot. Like, the first dungeon is like, I believe it's the Mayan temple, basically. Like, it deals like heavily with that, and like
Okay.
you go to like the underwater city of Mu, you go to Angkor Wat, you go to the Egyptian pyramids, you go to the Great Wall of China, and the whole thing is you're going around the world trying to collect these 6 mystic statues in order to reach the Tower of Babel and stop this comet from colliding with the planet. Really rocky translation, as a lot of Japanese developed games from that era had. But yeah, it's just overall a neat little magical game that also has some surprisingly dark elements to it, and overall a very heartwarming ending. And it's just absolutely delightful, and I love it to pieces.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's funny after making these lists, like how powerful the nostalgia can be,
Mm-hmm.
but it feels so appropriate.
Yeah.
Of
Oh,
like
absolutely.
that is the correct emotion to go with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially like, yeah, I spent a lot of time on this list because a lot of there was a lot of stuff where I like wanted to put more. You know, I have a huge list of contenders I put together, and a lot of them are more recent games that I played.
Mhm.
Just purely like on a, you know, like, oh yeah, I really liked playing that game. Oh yeah, I really liked playing that game. But then just sort of trying to remember, like, you know, the games that really affected me or that really stuck with me. That was the tricky thing because, you know, again, it's the recency bias. It's very easy to kind of just like overwrite your memory with something that happened sooner, kind of thing. And yeah, I had a lot on there that, you know, were kind of like, oh, you know, I really like this game, but, you know, it's kind like, you know, I had Breath of the Wild and Death Stranding and, you know, Elden Ring as contenders, but ultimately I kind of was like, okay, well, these games have a lot in common. You know, I obviously am a sucker for that style of game, So I really kind of want to pick one that's like my favorite of that genre,
Mhm.
or that style, I guess, because they're kind of all slightly different genres.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, I can't pick Abduction. I really wanted to pick Abduction for one of them too, but Abduction is the newer game from the from Cyan, from the Mist studio.
Oh, gotcha.
It's very good. It's really really good. It has it has some really really interesting puzzle design that's like you feel really good when you solve it. And then there's a bullshit one where you have to like learn a different number system and do math with it, and I was like, no, like,
Womp womp.
sorry, time to Google that.
Well, let's do that quick roundup now that we've
Oh yeah,
now that
yeah,
we've
good
finished
idea.
off that list. So, as
Mhm.
voted by you for our topic, Gooncast's top 5 favorite games of all time.
Mhm.
And for Lee, that was starting at number 10, Elden Ring, Pokemon Gold and Silver, Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, League of Legends, put down your pitchforks, Tekken Tag Tournament, Armored Core Silent Line, Cyberpunk 2077, Kingdom Hearts 2, Shadow of the Colossus, and StarCraft, the original Brood War.
Damn. All right. And for Cat, that was coming in at number 10, Super Mario Sunshine, Evolve, Nancy Drew and the Curse of Blackmore Manor, Skyrim, Journey, Silent Hill 2, Sherlock Holmes: The Devil's Daughter, the Phoenix Wright trilogy, Ghost of Tsushima, and finally, Myst 4 Revelation.
And as for me, it's Harvest Moon 64, Drakengard, Devil May Cry 3, Dante's Awakening, Silent Hill 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, Banjo-Kazooie, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Demon Souls 2009, and Resident Evil 2002, and then finally Illusion of Gaia for the Super Nintendo.
Hell yeah.
It's so funny how Caroline actually messaged me this. I don't think she knows Lee super well, but she was like, James and Kat's lists are like 100% them, and I like seeing Lee's list now too. These lists are just 100% us.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
so fitting to see these lists come together and like just be like, yeah, this is like a perfect snapshot of these three people right here.
Yeah, for real. I was actually just having a similar thought, Kat, when you were going through your list. I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, this sounds really accurate.
Yep. Yeah. When I was listening to yours, I was like, yep, 100%. And it really paints like a good picture of like who we are as people and as gamers, and yeah.
Yeah, and it makes me, hate Lee
Solid.
more because he likes League of Legends.
Hey, man, I came from a different time.
I mean,
back when the sun that was shining over Summoner's Rift was a little bit brighter.
listen, I in reality, I
No.
can't say shit. Drakengard's on my list, man.
That's true.
It's-
I got a couple of so-called stinkers as well, but
Oh, I mean,
you know.
I think Drakengard was the only one where both of you audibly were like, "What the fuck?"
Yes,
I knew
correct.
one from that franchise would be on your list,
Mhm.
and I thought it was for sure going to be between Automata and Near Replicant.
Yes. I was like, it's got to be like, I'm like, Nier's on his list, duh. But then, yeah, hearing
No.
because you always meme on how bad the like final boss of Drakengard is, so I was just like,
No, it's
you gotta-
awful. It's
I
awful. I've
know.
never beaten it legitimately. It's a fucking dick move. It's a shit post of an ending. It literally is a joke ending that Yoko Taro thought would be funny. And it is funny, but it's fucking awful. But that doesn't change the fact that I respect the balls for fucking including this bullshit. This
Goddamn.
nonsensical horse shit of a final boss where it just throws out every fucking mechanic and goes, "No, bro, it's Guitar Hero now. Get good." And you fuck up one note and you're dead. It's game over. Do the whole song over again. It's
God.
nonsense. But the fucking balls on that man. Like that sort of shit would never fucking fly today unless it's like Indie Circle, right? Like and this is a fucking Square Enix joint. This is a fucking AAA publisher wanting their own Dynasty Warriors. And they happened to get Yoko Taro to do it. And it was a blessing and a curse. Because, like, when Yoko Taro wasn't involved in Drakengard 2. And Drakengard 2 is fundamentally a more normal game. It is a more conventional JRPG narrative. And that's the reason why it's the black sheep of the franchise. That's the reason why Yoko Taro has been involved in every game since. Is because, like, no, these games are kind of shitty because, except for Automata and the most recent Replicant remaster, because of the lack of budget and the lack of the inexperienced dev team and the lack of skill and the overambition and everything like that. But there's something there, man. The insanity of this man just pouring forth on the page. I respect the bucking of trends and ignoring sort of the publisher mandates. It's also why, even though Silent Hill 2 is on my list, I kind of have more respect for Silent Hill 1 because of the fact that Konami was like, we want you to make a more Hollywood version of Resident Evil because we just want cash money from survival horror. And they got all of their quote-unquote C-tier developers, the misfits, together to make this thing. And the team just didn't listen to any publisher mandates. And Konami just gave up on them and let them do whatever the fuck they want. And that's how we got Silent Hill, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or Demon Souls, where it was a failed project that From Software considered basically dead in the water. And Hidetaka Miyazaki took over the project because he loved dark fantasy. And he wanted to fucking make a dark fantasy game. And his first thing was to ignore everything that Sony requested. That was his first thing, was like, everything that Sony wants, we're not fucking
just
doing it. Because Sony wanted them to just basically make Skyrim. They wanted their own Skyrim. And From Software couldn't do that. And Miyazaki knew they couldn't do that. So he was like, fuck that, we're not doing this shit. And Sony and the upper management at From Software were basically like, all right, fine, the project is a piece of shit anyway. We could cancel it at any moment. Just, we don't care. Do whatever you want. And just that sort of insanity of just like, I'm just going to buck trend and do whatever the fuck I want. Miyazaki's now president of the company. He got president of the company like 8 years after Demon Souls came out. That's insane. Like, he went from like a nobody with no game dev experience, and he just played on the subject of your pick, Shadow of the Colossus. He played Ico, and he was like, I want to make video games. So he dropped out of like he dropped out of his, I think, accounting job and became a game dev and started making Armored Core games until Demon Souls.
Thank God he did.
I think he directed Armored Core 5, I think. Well, he directed one of the late like the next gen, not next gen, but like 360 PS3 era Armored Core games. That was like his first directing thing, and then he heard they were making this dark fantasy shit. He's like, I'm fucking taking this shit over. Give it to me.
Nice.
Yeah, but yeah.
All right. Should we hop into the wrap up of what we've been doing for the past week, I guess?
Yeah, I mean,
I've been doing nothing but playing Elden Ring. Next.
Hell yeah. Okay, very nice, very nice.
Keep it short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
I've been playing Elden Ring.
Jam?
Haven't really been doing much, but only thing I can really mention is I mentioned it to you guys in the our little group chat thing. I played the demo for 9 Souls, which is the new game by Red Candle Games. They are the development team behind Detention and Devotion, and it's kind of branching outside of the comfort zone where it's not a indie horror title. It's currently being crowdfunded. Demos on Steam. I liked it a lot. It's a 2D side-scroller hack and slash sort of game, and it seems to borrow elements from the From Software sort of thing, with high emphasis on parrying and you resting at like checkpoints and getting your healing items back, but like enemies kind of respawn and whatnot. shows a lot of promise. Art style is really, really cool. Narrative is, from what the art style was portraying, is surprisingly dark and fucked up and interesting. And I'm curious to see the final product when it ships next year.
Cool. Very
Hell
nice.
yeah.
I ended up getting my plat for Horizon Forbidden West on a couple days ago.
Nice.
Yeah, so I went back to the game because I was just like, hey, I got my plat for Elden Ring. That was my big push. 170 hours in, I was like, cool. After 170 hours of this other game, let me dive back into the game I started before this. And it was surprisingly not a big deal to get back into it. I think because I was playing on a lower difficulty, and also because it's pretty handholdy about, you know, tutorializing you with stuff. But that kind of ultimately became a bit detrimental. I don't know if something weird happened with a patch that broke stuff, but I was having issues with audio mixes. The music and a lot of the background noise was tuned way higher than the dialogue in cinematics, which not great, not a great look. And also I I had a hitbox issue actually that really bothered me, which might have been because I was playing on a lower difficulty. Maybe they just tuned it that way. Although I think that's not the right way to tune that sort of thing. There should be an option to like limit hitbox, or certainly this shouldn't happen. I think I mentioned to you guys I was fighting some of the final enemies in like the final chapter. And I had an AI buddy with me, and I at this point had a pretty solid like grasp of like how to encounter enemies. I would like scan them, double check what their weaknesses were, what their elemental weaknesses were, and then start hitting them with whatever elemental weakness they had. And so I did that. I scanned these last enemies, and they were weak to acid and plasma, and I was like, dope, I just got a plasma bow. I'm gonna fucking whip that shit out and start blasting it with plasma. I start doing that. My AI companion starts yelling at me, hey, Aloy, you gotta use acid on them. They're weak to acid. And I'm like, they have 2 elemental weaknesses, and I'm using one of them right now. Like,
Leave me alone.
First of all, I scanned them, so I saw what their elemental weaknesses were, but like less than a minute ago. And then I'm actively shooting them with one of their elemental weaknesses, so clearly I understand how elemental weaknesses work, game. Don't do that. Like, absolutely don't do that kind of shit. It's, you know. So, yeah, that was a little frustrating, but ultimately pretty solid game. You know, it's a nice easy it's a nice easy plat, so very very breezy, but I think Horizon would have done better in both cases if it had scheduled its release better. Like, really, next time you just need to release like a month earlier than Breath of the Wild or Elden Ring.
Yeah.
The kind of like
keep making that
genre-defining
mistake.
open
Well,
worlds.
at least to Guerrilla's credit, for
Mhm.
Forbidden West, Elden Ring was supposed to launch in January, a full month before Horizon, but
That's true.
bugs and polish resulted in
Sure.
them delaying it for a month. That said,
Alright.
Guerrilla and Sony should have just been like, "All right, I'll fuck. We're gonna push it to March."
Yeah, we'll push it too. Yeah, exactly. 100%. I think they should have been like, okay, we'll give ourselves a little extra time too, just because. Push it to a couple weeks afterwards, or like a month afterwards, just because there was way too much hype around Elden Ring, way too much hype around Breath of the Wild, and I think that like these games would have done. You know, I don't think they did poorly at all by any means. I think a lot of people really like them. I personally am like, they're all right. The first one was fine. The second one improved a lot on the first one. I really like the narrative of the like before the collapse kind of stuff that you uncover through exploration. I think that stuff's really cool. But a lot of the like modern day drama that's happening with her, I really didn't like that they did the super cheap easy thing of like, just instead of making the character, you know, like putting the character exactly where they were at the end of the game, they like reversed her character development, where like at the end of last game she kind of like, you know, she started the game being a loner and being, you know, intentionally isolated because she's an outcast, and there's, you know, story reasons for that. and then kind of like slowly but surely proving herself and like gaining companions that like help her, and like learning to rely on other people. And they kind of just like threw that into reverse for the second game because they were like, oh, we can't have like buddy AI with us the whole time, so therefore she's going to be aloof and independent and not know how to work with people again. And you're just kind of like, don't do that, games. Don't pretend like the characters suddenly like just backpedal on their development. Just you can make another excuse for why they can't be there with you. So that's my only thing. I have like I don't really think it's like it's not ever gonna crack my top 10s. I don't think it's even gonna make like the top 10 of this year for me, kind of thing. But it was I think a lot of people aren't giving it enough credit because, and I think that's purely because of release date timing. Like, I think it would get a lot more positive feedback, positive like responses if it weren't mostly people being like, ugh, like why is everyone only talking about Elden Ring? We should talk about this game. It's like, if it had just its own little breath, like it had some room to breathe, had its own little date where it was like the big thing that came out and everyone could talk about it for a week, that would be cool. Like, right? That would have been way better. So yeah, that's it. That's all.
All right.
So yeah.
The people spoke.
Yeah.
They made their voices heard.
Thank you guys for voting. I'm glad we could provide you guys with this little insight into our characters and our our gooniness.
I'm really glad we got to express so many opinions about the Silent Hill circumcision theory.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh boy.
And don't forget, people, our individual lists don't really matter because at the end of the day, we all just want you to go play Illbleed.
And Ring Terror's Realm.
Yep. Yeah. Well, no, truly though, like these lists are they're very personal, obviously. None of us are saying that these are like, the greatest games of all time, and if you don't like them, then you're an idiot or whatever. These are just the games that are the most definitive to us in terms of our gaming careers and who we are as people, and
And it's also important to remember that at the end of the day, it's like the guy from Creepshow that's just like, yeah, I want my cake, but the cake is his foreskin, to quote Wang. Because you got to watch out for that satanic Illuminati foreskin harvesting. That said, no, yeah, these are a favorite list, favorite games. It's not best. Just chill out. Everybody's allowed to like whatever they want. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just chill out.
Yeah, everybody like what you want, and like, I mean, and if us talking about any of these games like kind of like kindled some interest for you, like, awesome. I hope if you do decide to check out any games on our lists, I hope you enjoy them.
Don't play Omicron though.
Plenty of good stuff. Don't play Omicron. Also, you can't play Evolve, so don't play Evolve.
Play Omicron.
All right. So yeah, signing off. It's Cat, aka the Attack Cat on Twitch. Probably gonna get back into streaming at some point. It's gonna be a busy couple months though, so maybe not for a while, but keep on keeping on, everybody.
Hell yeah. And this was once again your boy Lee Alder, the Valley Jester, on Twitch at twitch.tv/Valley Jester. Taking a hiatus right now as I am back into school. I'm a student of addiction studies now. So I will be given that career move the majority of my time for a little bit, and the rest of it will be serving Lady Ronnie. So
fuck yeah.
Keep your eyes on the stars, everybody.
There you go.
Eyes on the stars.
Yeah, this is James, Saber0307 on Twitch. Streaming all sorts of shit. Belated streaming Resident Evil Remake for its 20th anniversary, and also finishing off Illusion of Gaia. And then we'll be getting back into the Extra Life shit and periodically chipping away at that piece of shit Omicron, because fuck you, Lee. Yeah. So in the meantime, you all take care of yourself, stay safe, be excellent to each other, and satanic Illuminati foreskin harvesting.
Satanic Illuminati foreskin harvesting.
Yeah, and get fucked.
That's my new death metal band.
Yeah, there you go.